Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I, Rakshit Satija, welcome you all at the DevCon 2021. IEEE NCU student branch comprises people with diversification in their interests and is able to portray their active participation in every possible way they can. The unique thing about the student branch is that everyone started from the square one. Just from that, they built the whole student branch and with their sheer efficacy and is one of the most active student branches in the Delhi section. IEEE NCU is organizing its one of the flagship events, DevCon. DevCon 21 is a series of events, including workshops, webinars, competitions held by some great minds in the world of technology, organized to satiate your tech appetite. We are here with this event to make our audience wonder about how the world of technology operates behind the scenes. The theme of the event focuses on both design and development, the visual aspect of the product, as well as efficiency in our programs. A wide assortment of events and never seen before sessions will be observed over the next 3 days. We are expecting to cater to a group of hundreds of young developers who aim to grow and prosper with us over the course of these events. Here we have with us the faculty of NCU. Mr. Sumit Kumar, faculty coordinator of Code Arts and assistant professor at the North Cap University. Ms. Poonam Chaudhary, chapter advisor, Thames NCU, VNCU, and assistant professor at North Cap University. Mrs. Srishti Sharma, branch counselor of IEEE NCU and assistant professor at the North Cap University. Mrs. Vaishali Kalra, chapter advisor, IAS NCU, and assistant professor at the North Cap University. Mrs. Shraddha Vashisht, HOD of Electrical, Electronics and Communication Department at the North Cap University. Now, let's welcome our chief guest, Dr. Rachna Garg. Dr. Rachna Garg is a professor in Electrical Engineering, Department of Delhi Technological University, Delhi. She's also the director of Equal Opportunity Cell, DTU. She's senior member and an active IEEE volunteer. She held many volunteer positions in IEEE. She was the Vice Chair, India Council, Secretary, Delhi Section, Treasurer, Delhi Section, Chair, PES, IAS, Delhi Section, Delhi Chapter, Chair, V, Delhi Section. She has won Outstanding Chapter Engineer Award from PES Delhi Chapter, Certificate for Leadership and Contribution to Art and SAC programs from Art and SAC, Certificate of Appreciation 2012-2013 from Director IEEE Art. Presently, she's the chairperson of Delhi section. We welcome you, ma'am. I would like you to take this moment and have a few words from you.
Thank you, Rakshit, for the nice introduction. And all the dignitaries, faculty members present today, dear students, and all the participants and volunteers who are present, a very good evening to all of you. At the outset, I would like to thank the NCU student branch, especially the branch counselor, Ms. Srishti, for inviting me to be a part of this inaugural ceremony of this very important event, DevCon 21. Now, IEEE Delhi section, as you know, is one of the 12 sections in India coming under Asia Pacific region, region 10 of IEEE. At present, it covers the northern part of country consisting of 4 states of Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, and National Capital Territory of Delhi, Union Territories of Chandigarh, Jammu and Kashmir, and Ladakh. IEEE Delhi section has a long history. It has been started in on May 13, 1976, and has about 3,500 active members. Delhi section has got two subsections at Chandigarh and Rajasthan and 20 technical society council chapters like PES, that is Power and Energy Society, IAS, Industrial Application Society, Computer Society, Control System Society, so on and so forth. I think your student branch must also be having many of such societies in your institute. Along with technical societies, we have some affinity groups also. In Delhi section, we have four affinity groups like Women in Engineering, uh, then Life Members Affinity Group, then Young Professionals, and Consultants Network Affinity Group. So I think your institute must be having WIE Affinity Group, and YP Affinity Group is for the young professionals. Young professional means those who had done their graduation in last 10 years. Earlier it was called the Gold Group. Now it is Young Professionals Group. So in Delhi section, we have around 100 plus student branches and student branch chapters. And your branch is also one of them. So it's a vast network of different student branches, different societies, and different student branch chapters of these societies. And Delhi section is one of the very vibrant sections of India. We had the largest area in India. Delhi section has the largest area, but the sad part is that our membership is not that high. The other sections like Bangalore, Hyderabad, they have higher membership as compared to Delhi section. So I request all of you to become a member of IEEE Delhi section and get benefited by many technical and other management activities which are held by Delhi section. Now, one of the technical activities is DevCon 21, which is being organized at NCO. Now, this activity is very important because, as you know, IEEE is a technical society, and this DevCon will give you a exposure to the new technologies. Also, in this period of pandemic, when you are not having your regular classes, most of you are having only the online classes, and I would say you people are a victim of online classes because whatever you learn offline, when you interact with your faculty, when you interact with your colleagues, and when you go to the laboratories, you learn so many things which are missing when you are getting taught by online classes. And in such a scenario, it becomes all the more important to attain and to organize such technological events which give you a technical edge over the others. Now, this DevCon 21 is a series of events including workshops, hackathon, and many competitions. And as I told you, the aim of this DevCon is basically to introduce the participants to the new technologies. The thing that is missing while you are doing the online classes. So, in real world, it is not only your bookish knowledge which will come to your aid, but getting the extra information, attending such conferences, attending such workshops is very important. And I had seen IEEE students, those who are very active IEEE members who attend all these workshops, who organize these workshops, they get very good jobs at the time of their placements, because IEEE, sharpen your it sharpen your personality. It not only increase your knowledge, but it also gives you a better personality. You know how to interact with so many people, and at the time of interview, it is your personality that counts. Along with, definitely there is no shortcut to knowledge has to be there. But you might have seen so many good students, they are not able to secure the good job. It is because they don't have the required personality. They don't have that confidence in themselves that IEEE gives you. When you are organizing any event, n number of things can go wrong. It may be a small thing or it may be a big disaster. But you always have to be ready with your plan B, plan C, or plan D so as to overcome those disasters. And this gives you an extra confidence that yes, you can handle so many things. If anything can go wrong, still you have the guts to handle those things. And therefore, IEEE not only gives you the technical superiority, but it also gives you the management skill. The students who are involved in organizing this DevCon 2021 must have experienced so many things, must have experienced so many things which had gone wrong while they are organizing this event. And one way or other, they had been able to overcome those misgivings or overcome those things which had gone wrong, and somehow they had turned them into the correct thing. And so this gives them a very good management skills, which if you are not a IEEE member, if you are not a active member, you will never get. And again, just paying the IEEE fees is not enough. If you are not taking part actively in IEEE activities, if you are not taking benefit of these such type of technical workshops by attending it, or if you are not organizing anything, you are just paying the money and you are thinking that you will become tax savvy or you will become a better personality, then it is not going to happen. You have to work hard for that. All these volunteers, along with their regular studies, they are working hard to organize the events. So the time management is the basic requirement. They are managing their time in such a way that their studies are not lacking. Still, they are able to do so many things in those 24 hours only. You have 24 hours, we also have 24 hours. Everyone has got 24 hours only. And in those 24 hours, what you can, what all you can put in will describe you. If you are wasting your time just lying, just watching movies, watching Netflix, etc., then you are wasting your time. But if you are utilizing your time constructively, you are using this time to develop your hobby, to do something extra in your studies, then you are basically utilizing your time. Again, I will come back to DevCon. This DevCon 2021 is a 3-day event, and in 3 days, they had covered a lots of things. So, if you are joining DevCon, you will be you will be kept busy for whole of these 3 days. And not only they are making you learn different things, they are also organizing many competitions to check your knowledge, to increase your competitive skill, and to make you uh, uh, and to make you concentrate on basically what you are learning. So they have many programs which I think they had given you in the brochure. So, with these words, I give my best wishes to the organizers of this program, to the faculty advisor of NCU, because I know NCU is working very hard. Last year also they had organized very good event. I had been a part of that event award ceremony, I think, of section they had organized, and this time I am also seeing you are organizing quite good events. You had, I think, joined hands with site also. Mr. Ravinder Joshi was telling me you people were doing some activities with him also. So, all in all, the NCU is a very vibrant branch, and this cannot happen if you will not receive support from your administration. So I thank the administration of NCU and your faculty advisors, whether it's some society chapter advisor or student branch advisor, uh, for guiding you so well. And I also would like to say to the participants, ki please attend this workshop with open mind, and keep your concentration on the workshops. Attend all the lectures or webinars that they are organizing, because uh, this will give you, definitely it is going to give you an edge over the other students. So with these words, I thank you, the NCU, for inviting me to this inaugural ceremony, and I give my best wishes for a successful organization of this event. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the motivation and inspiration to achieve the best of our potential. We are delighted to have you today. Now, we would like to facilitate you, ma'am, with a token of appreciation.
Thank you, Rachna ma'am. Thank you so much for sparing your precious time for us today, for joining us, and for your very wise words that you have said right now. I think you have motivated the participants a lot, and you have told them how even the volunteers who are organizing this, how it would help them, this event, and whatever work they do for IEEE. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your kind words.
Thank you, Srishti, and thanks for the nice memento. Can you again show me that memento? I will take a pic
Yeah,
of that.
please. Yeah, please. Can we have that again? No.
Okay, if it is not possible, please send the pic to me.
Yes, ma'am. We'll mail you.
Okay, because you must be record.
Yeah.
One second.
Yeah,
Just give
yes.
me a moment. Thank you. And thank you, Srishti. Your branch is really very active. And as I told you, without the support of branch counselor and higher administration, this is not possible. So keep
Thank
it
you,
up
ma'am.
and keep
Also,
doing
thanks
good
to the
work.
section also for supporting and guiding us at every step, ma'am. We are very thankful to all of you also.
Thank you. But Srishti, I have to leave because as I told them, I
Yes,
am
ma'am.
on
Yes.
some other meeting also.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank
Okay.
you so much, ma'am.
And
Thank you.
bye. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am, for your presence today.
Thank you, Rakshit. And bye.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you.
Moving next to the workshops, extensive 3 days of webinars that help students get expert guidance on building projects, along with hands-on speaker sessions oriented to help the developers grow their skills that have been planned. Around 3 or 4 webinars will be arranged each day, expanding upon a wide range of topics, each focusing on a unique subject matter, ideas, discussions with eminent speakers. The webinars aim to develop the roadmap of design and development, and thus are planned accordingly, starting right from scratch and make them ready to contribute to real life projects. First up, we have Hack Overflow. Hackathons have proven to be a superb medium to get ideas from brand spanking new tech products and services. It would help bring people with technical backgrounds together to make teams to unravel a drag or develop new ideas. Hackathons help participants update their IT skills, meet people, and work with others in their field. So here we are excited about the discussions and projects which will happen at this accessibility themed 24-hour open innovation hackathon. Join us for a fun weekend of hacking. If you haven't registered yet for the hackathon, you can go and get that done right away. Next event we have Design EQ. We are trying to find people to showcase their portfolios and to supply inspiration from these looking to reinforce their own professional portfolios, learn different skills using HTML and CSS and obtain hands-on experience on those skills. The competition is hospitable to all ears and skill sets. Remember, your work speaks for itself, especially when you aren't with your work to elucidate it. And this event ends on Sunday, just an announcement. Blockchain technology is poised to revolutionize the way digital world handles data and does business. Initially created as a platform for supporting Bitcoin, blockchain is demonstrating a level of versatility and security that has made many sectors of business and government take notice and begin putting it to their use. Today we have an eminent speaker, Mr. Akhil Bharti, blockchain developer and a crypto wallets builder. Whether you're interested in creating your own blockchain, learning the basics, or trading cryptocurrency like a pro, he'll be guiding us through the session for all this. Let's welcome him on the stage. Mr. Akhil Bharti.
Hi, thanks for the introduction, Rakshit. And give me a couple of minutes and we will get started. Let me know if my screen is visible.
I think you'll have to share it again. Yes, it's visible now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, couple of minutes and
Yeah,
we will.
okay.
So, hi everyone, I'm Akhil, and today I will be talking about blockchain tech and how you can get started with building decentralized applications on a Tezos platform. So, Before understanding what is blockchain, let's just take a step back and ask ourselves like why blockchain is so important. So uh, you must have seen like or felt this that whenever you share a file, say for example a music file over internet, then the person who receives it ends up having another copy of it. So you basically create two copies instead of one. But and traditional internet is designed to do that, which is transfer of information. But if you are transferring something of value, then you want that it disappears from the sender's account and appears up in the receiver's account. And that's where a blockchain comes in place. Blockchain is designed to do that. It's designed to do transfer of value. Now, let's just see how and why blockchain is different from any other payment system that we have right now. So, in most of the payment systems today, we have users, and then we have a central person or authority which enables these transactions. Say, for example, even if you want to give a person some money, say 100 rupees, then you can say that like I don't need this middle person. I can directly hand him over cash, and we will be done with the transaction. But even in that note, it's written that uh, RBI promises to give like this person the amount which is written on the note. So kind of RBI is enabling here the transaction that's taking place between us, because that note on its own doesn't mean much. But in blockchain, everyone is an independent node. And uh, the idea of the system is that all transactions are open on the network and everyone is able to see uh, what transactions are taking place. And thus it can be argued that there is no anonymity in terms of who owns what amount, or what is a person's account balance. So So basically, if you want to send a transaction, you have to send it to everyone, although the transaction initially was supposed to be taking place between you two. Now, if anyone can send a transaction uh, on the network, then how do we identify that who is the owner of what? So here a concept called asymmetric key cryptography comes into place. So basically, it says that in this cryptography we have two keys. So the first is the private key. This is nothing but a random number. And using this private key, we generate a public key. So these two keys are kind of linked with each other. But it's possible to generate a private key from public key but it's not possible to generate public key from private key. And this is ensured using what is called a trapdoor function in blockchain, or in cryptography. Now let's just see like how these private keys and public keys can be used to identify, or can be used as some form of authentication. So say we have Bob, and he wants to uh, say to the network that I have written a piece of message. Then what he will have to do is, using his private key, he generates a signature. And this signature can be verified by the network using public key. So basically, Bob will send the signature and his public key to the network, and everyone will be able to say that, okay, this signature comes from from the person whom this public key belongs. So this is done using math. This is done using cryptographic scheme. It's called ECDSA. You can look it up if you want in more detail. We also have different signature schemes other than ECDSA as well. So basically, it's possible to verify using this signature and this message that what was the public key. So if we have the public key, then we know that a particular piece of transaction is coming from that public key, and Bob holds the private key corresponding to this public key that we have. And this will get cleared out in a second. You must have seen in blockchain, you don't you have addresses, so you must have seen a number like this, and these are usually 32 characters long. So what this is basic this is nothing uh, else but the public key of the user. And we don't associate it with some person, the amount or the transaction with some person. Rather, we associate with his public key. So your identity on the network is nothing else but your public key. So this is kind of your username in the conventional system. And to basically be able to create a transaction from which belongs to this public key, you have to hold the private key. And this becomes your password kind of. But unlike conventional systems where your password can be reset by a central server, if you lose your private key in blockchain, all your funds are gone, and you won't be able to retrieve those funds. And that's why most currencies with a fixed supply eventually uh, end up their supply decreases, and the currency eventually becomes a deflationary one. And deflationary currencies are good for economy, and you can also look this up in more details if you want. And but basically the idea is using a private key, you create transactions and you broadcast it to the network, and the network is able to associate that transaction to a particular public key, which is your identity on the network. So Bob, instead of being called Bob on the network, is now this particular string. Now we know from where the transaction is coming from, but it may happen that some transactions arrive before some other transactions which were created at a recent date. So for example, there is one transaction and it was created at 12:10 p.m. and there is another transaction which was created at 12:15 p.m. So it may happen that because of network lag, this may arrive at a later stage to a node than this transaction because of some network glitch. So now, how do we solve this problem of ordering? How do we trust that which transaction comes at what happened at what time? So one can say that you can include the transaction time in the transaction message itself that the user signs. But again, it depends on the user what timestamp he wants to put, and he can put any timestamp. So that's where the concept of a chaining or a chain of blocks come into the picture. So basically, the first block or block 0 is called Genesis block. And you hash the contents of the Genesis block. And this is the first hash we got. And this is block hash for block number 0. And we use this hash in our next. Let me just go through hashing first, like what exactly is hashing. Uh, So hashing is another cryptographic concept. So hashing is a function or a technique, and it has some properties. So basically, if you there is some data and you hash it, then you get a string, say h0. And if you hash the same data again, you will again get uh, the same hash, and these you can't get a different hash. Yeah, these have to be equal, so you always get the same hash for the same data. And the other one is that you can't reconstruct. This is a one-way function, so you can't construct data back from hash, so this is not possible. And and let's see how this is used for ordering. So basically, if you have some string, say apple, and you hash it, you will always arrive at a fixed length string. It will always be a fixed. It doesn't matter how long the initial data string was. So we are able to use this as kind of integrity check. So say even if we change one letter in our text, and we hash it again, our resultant hash will be completely different. It will be like entirely different from our initial hash, even though the data was changed only like slightly. So we are able to use this as a integrity check for our data, and we will see how it's used to secure or order blockchains. So we hash the first contents of Genesis block. Uh, this is the original block. It's like embedded in the code itself that this will be the first block, and then uh, we use the hash of this first block to create our first transactions, and we use those transactions and hash it again, and we get h1, and then we use it again in our next block, and along with the transactions of this block we get h2, and similarly h3. So now if someone tries to go and change this particular block or content of this transaction, if someone tries to go ahead and change a previous transaction, let's see what happens. Then he will have to compute this h1 again, and he will have to this will again, the data of this will change, and we know like when slide change the hash changes significantly. So this will become a different hash, and this will again become a different hash. So we see that like even if someone tries to change like one transaction, the entire state will change, and like everyone will be aware that okay, someone tried to change the transaction. And but what's stopping someone to just go ahead and change the contents of transaction and push it to the network? So that's where uh, proof of uh, proof of work or consensus mechanisms come into picture. So we have proof of work, we have proof of stake, we have raft, uh, we have many other consensus mechanisms. So but the ultimate goal is arriving what is the order of transaction, and making sure that someone doesn't just go and someone is not just able to go ahead and edit the entire state of the chain. So let's just see how this happens in proof of work. This is the consensus mechanism for Bitcoin, which is the most popular cryptocurrency right now. So basically, when someone sends a transaction on the network, so the contents of the transactions are like this. So first you have to write whom it's coming from. To so from is basically your public key that we have seen earlier, AAF or something like that, and two is the public address of Alice. Again, it will be something like. And this is nothing but the public keys of Bob and Alice, and there will be amount, and timestamp maybe, and then after all the content is ready, Bob signs it using his private key, and then sends it to the network. In the network, there is a it basically goes into a pool along with all other transactions. And from this pool, miners from this pool, miners pick up transaction. Miners are nothing but nodes that validate transactions. So in proof of work, we call them miners. In proof of stake, we call them validators. In Tezos, we call them bakers. Mm, yeah. Now, after miners have picked the transactions from this pool, they in proof of work, there is a random number called nonce, which is a block nonce, and they try to and they hash it. So we will get some block hash, but not any hash is accepted by the network. Network has a difficulty condition. So how do we put a difficulty condition on a hash? So we can say that the hash, the first 8 digits of the hash should be zero, like this. So if you try to find a hash which has this condition, then it is going to take you some time. You basically have to change and keep changing a nonce 1 2 3 4 and so on until the hash matches this condition, and this takes some computing power. And the algorithm is designed in such a way that all blocks, or this computation for all blocks, is going to take 10 minutes. And for if some reason the it takes more than 10 minutes, the network will adjust the difficulty so that the next time it will decrease the difficulty so that it takes 10 minutes the next time. And if the difficulty increases, uh, sorry, if the time is less than 10 minutes, then we increase the difficulty. Then okay, now it means that the computing power of the network has increased. So that's how difficulty is decided. And once after 10 minutes, someone has find among the miners has find the block, he pushes it to the network again, and the network sees that okay, it satisfies the difficulty condition, and it accepts the transaction. This is how proof of work is implemented. So basically you have to do this work of 10 minutes, or which is nothing but computing those hashes. And that's how basically you tell the network that okay, yeah, you are eligible to basically push this transaction because you have spent this much time. Another popular method of consensus is proof of stake. So here it says that basically they say for a particular currency uh, XYZ, you have 10 million of supply. And it basically says that if someone has say 1 million of supply, then it's valuable for him to keep the network safe. Then he is allowed to become a validator for the transaction. So basically, some person has to stake some money to become a validator in the proof of stake system. And we will see this basically causes centralization because some people with a lot of funds end up getting a say in what gets pushed in the network, and we will see how Tezos counters this problem in a while. Now let's just go back to our blog diagram here again. Yeah. Now we see that for each hash you have to spend 10 minutes. So for each wrong hash, or for each fake hash, you will have to spend 10 minutes of time generating them. And but there is a rule in blockchain called longest chain rule, where you always trust the chain which is longest in the network. So in these 30 minutes of time, someone else will definitely create a new block in the next 10 minutes, and that will become the longest block, and no one will accept his this fake block, which was s dash, s2 dash, and s3 dash, and no one will accept this change. And that's how a blockchain protects itself from transactions, mutation of transactions. So this is why blockchain is said to be immutable, and any transaction done on blockchain is permanent. Any questions so far? Okay. Uh, So everyone is able to associate the transaction to a particular public key, but he won't be able to associate it to you. So no one will say that Yash transferred this much money to this account. Instead, the network will see that this much money moved from this address to this address, and that's all you need to verify the transaction in blockchain, or by validators. So now let's just understand, like, what are the advantages of using blockchain. The first one definitely would be transparency. So everyone is able to see each transaction, what's happening, even though there is some form of anonymity even after that, since we see like it's associated with some numbers and not exactly a person. Yeah, the next one would be no central authority. So blockchain helps you to bypass any middleman. And for example, in case of transaction, we saw we were able to bypass the central government bank, which is RBI in our case. The third would be open participation, that anyone with an internet connection and a device can participate in the transaction. And in many countries like Chile and Venezuela, people are using blockchain without even knowing, like they are using it. So they are able to you buy daily, or interact or transact on a day-to-day basis using bitcoins without even knowing it. So that's something to think about. And the fourth one would be immutable. We saw like how hard it is to change the state of blockchain is. uh, Fifth one is that no trust is required do to do transactions on blockchain, and I think it's the most important one, because say for example, if you have a lot of money and you want to lend it, then usually you have to go to a bank, you deposit your money. The bank finds out a person who is eligible for the loan, and it gives it to them, and in turn it makes a small cut in between, which is the difference between the interest rate it gives you and charges the user, charges the borrower. So it ends up making that small cut, but and it does that to ensure trust. So we basically trust a bank. We don't trust anyone else to with our money. But in blockchain systems, what can happen is that you send your funds to a smart contract. It will basically check borrower's credit score directly through API or Oracle, and it will disperse those funds, and you won't have to pay someone in the middle for that trust gap that he is filling, which was blockchain in this case. Sorry, which was banks in the case of normal transactions. So now, why does Tezos come into the picture? We already have a lot of cryptocurrencies. What is Tezos adding to the ecosystem? So sometimes back in Ethereum, there was a hack called DAO hack. So basically, a lot of funds were withdrawn from a particular contract, and it was basically a major loss of funds for the community. And what then community decided is they came together and they reverted the transaction, and everyone who agreed to revert the transaction is Ethereum as we know it. And but some people argued that blockchain is not meant to be changed and it should remain immutable, and they stuck to the unreverted transaction, and they are now known as Ethereum Classic. And Ethereum Classic is now valued at much lower price than Ethereum. And we saw like how just one difference of opinion caused this hard fork, and many people eventually losing their funds. So uh, what Tezos proposes is on-chain governance. So
Excuse me, sir.
basically,
Akhil, sir.
yeah,
Sir, can you please share your single screen showing on your presentation? We
okay,
will read out the comments for you.
cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so what Tezos proposes is on-chain governance. So basically, if you want to upgrade the network or do anything to the network, then you have to do a proposal, and you have to basically associate any cost, if any, uh, with the implementation of that proposal. And that proposal is now pushed to the network, and if it's accepted by enough validators, then that proposal is automatically used to upgrade the network, and whoever was the person who proposed that improvement gets the funds, or which is nothing but the development cost associated with it. So Tezos doesn't rely on off-chain organization or some sort of off-chain communication. It's all on-chain. You can basically see why a particular proposal is being accepted and why a particular proposal is being rejected. And there will since everyone comes to a consensus, and it's impossible to get a hard fork just because of opinion in Tezos. So we saw how proof of stake is very centralized. So instead, Tezos uses liquid proof of stake, which is nothing but a modified version wherein a small group of people can come together and form a staking pool. And if they are able to validate any transaction, everyone in that pool gets the transaction fees associated with that block and also the block reward. So in Tezos, each new block produces called baked, and uh, those validators are called bakers. So this is the architecture diagram of Tezos. This is the protocol, which is upgradable. We have the P2P layer, which is I think same for all blockchains. We have validators, which is again the validation engine of Tezos. This remains the same, but you can always change the protocol of the network. So you mostly have to worry about the right side, which is RPC. These are nothing but remote function calls, and uh, all application that you build is eventually going to talk to the network via this RPC. And this includes any clients that you're using, whether it be a JavaScript client or it may be a UI client as well. Uh, If you are using Explorer, then also it's talking to the RPC ultimately. Explorer is nothing else but a place where you can see all your past transactions or transactions associated with any account on the network. So, what are smart contracts? So, smart contracts are blockchains are nothing but large computers, and this is why sometimes they are also referred as virtual machines. For Ethereum, we have Ethereum virtual machine. For Tezos, we have a virtual machine which functions on Michelson, and uh, uh, basically smart contracts are code running on those machines. So unlike normal code, which runs on your local machine, this runs on the uh, smart contracts runs on the Tezos virtual machine here. So how can we use smart contracts? So smart contracts can be used to uh, draft any form of legal agreement or anything of that sort. So an example would be for your say you want to hire a freelance writer, or yeah, say you want to hire a freelance writer. So you basically draft a smart contract. Now whenever that freelancer writes a piece of content, that smart contract automatically does some plagiarism checks and all those, and once it succeeds, it transfers those funds to the writer automatically. There is no and it's all done using code, so you there is no ambiguity that if I write, then I will get my content or not, uh, or I will get my money or not, or from the person who's hiring, from his point of view, he will also be ensured that once the conditions for my content and all the quality checks are satisfied, then only the freelancer will get paid. So such systems are possible using using smart contracts. Right now, there are platforms which charge a huge fee for it, or you can build platforms similar to them on blockchain with very less fees compared to them. So SmartPy is the Python library which is used for writing smart contract on Tezos. So unlike Ethereum, where you have to learn Solidity to start writing smart contracts, in Tezos you can just use your existing knowledge of Python to start building smart contracts on Tezos. So these are some of the tools that you will be using for development. There is tester. You have a CLI version. So tester is used for local development. If you want to set up local development environment, then you have to install the tester CLI, and using the GUI, you can like run, build, and deploy contracts uh, on the UI itself. Taquito and Consul.js are JavaScript libraries that you use to basically interact with the Tezos blockchain. And SmartPy ID is your online ID that is used for writing code for Tezos blockchain. So let's just see that ID. You can just basically click online editor and it will open an example contract for you that you can just directly deploy and check. So just run here. Before that, you will have to set up a wallet. For that, there is Temple wallet. I'm adding these links. Alright. So once you have downloaded this Temple wallet, just go to this faucet. Go to this faucet and click I'm not a robot, get testnet. You will get this file, just download it, open your Temple wallet. Initially, it will ask you for some setup. You have to basically back up some key. So you can see right now I have 5 accounts. I can just you have to go to maximize view. For some reason, this import doesn't work in the normal view. Import account, faucet file, select JSON, and just add the file which you just downloaded. It will take some time and your account will be loaded with all the funds. Yeah, and after that's done, you can just go here, deploy my cousin contract. Just connect to FlorenceNet. FlorenceNet is the testnet that we are currently using. That's our primary testnet as of now. So Temple. Yeah, so we got account 6 with some initial balance. Now just go here, click Temple. It will ask you to connect. Just connect your new wallet. Do reveal account. It will ask you to sign a message. After this is done, you will this option will be enabled, and you will be able to estimate the cost. Yeah, now I should be able to estimate cost from RPC deploy contract, set, sign, and you can see my contract is deployed. I can just do Open Explorer, and it will redirect me to the place where I can interact with the contract. So this is you can build your transaction parameters here. Say you want to add 2 and 3 and build transaction parameter. It will build those parameters here for you, and just connect to Temple wallet again. It basically is using this contract which is we just deployed. Oh, now I have my account connected, send the transaction, and it will just and this is how you interact with the contract. Sending transaction. Yeah, so it takes some time for the transaction to get approved. Your result will appear up here, and yeah, that's how you can like build and test your run and test your contracts in the online ID. Uh, Thanks for joining in. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask now. And this is my email ID, and this is the Tezos community Telegram group that you can connect for any further questions as well.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us. Sir, we have a question from Yash Debra. In one of the slides, it was written that we can program money. So, what is that about?
Oh, programmable money. So basically, you can write smart contracts wherein like that money is much more than just like normal conventional money. So for example, uh, for normal currency you can't just put a escrow contract like the freelancer example I told about. But with Tezos it's possible. That's why we call it a programmable money.
I hope, Yash Debra, your question is answered. So, what inspired you to go in blockchain tech field?
Uh, in my college days, I experimented with a lot of tech, and eventually I stumbled upon blockchain. And what I felt is this is a tech which is as groundbreaking as internet, and I have a chance to get in early and also build some stuff which will eventually become big later on when blockchain is blockchain is everywhere and blockchain adoption is everywhere.
मैंने कैमरा ऑफ कर दिया.
Uh, okay, thanks everyone. So if you have any more questions, you can directly mail me or put them in the Tezos Telegram group. You will be forwarded a document with some initial hackathon ideas that you can build on. It will also have the resources associated with it, wherein uh, you can learn more about those ideas. You also will have a group for our Telegram group, and there you can put any questions related to development. Yeah. Thanks everyone. Bye bye.
Hi everyone, I have an important announcement to make. Hack Overflow and Design EQ are live right now. You can start building for the competitions. The Hack Overflow registrations will end tomorrow at 4 p.m. I repeat, the Hack Overflow registrations will end tomorrow at 4 p.m. and Design EQ will end at 12 p.m. on the Sunday. So if you have any doubts regarding any of the two, I request you to please join the Discord server. Link is given in the description. It might be on the chat anytime soon. And you can refer to those links, join the server, and you can post your queries. Thank you. So, with 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 the previous announcement, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to the next speakers. Hello and everyone, greetings to all of you. All of us are aware of the term data structures, but some of you might be curious about the details and what is its importance to a developer. A webinar on importance of data structures for developers is being arranged to let you all know that the data structures and algorithms are significant for a software developer too, and it indicates the problem solving abilities and a perspective for the employers on the depth of the data structures. And this is going to be conducted right now on the 25th June at 6 p.m. The speaker of the event is Mr. Abhishek Kumar, who is Google Summer of Code mentor at JBoss and a mentor in the Code for Cause. Code for Cause is a value-adding YouTube channel that has like over 50K subscribers right now, and and that was founded by a bunch of students who are really motivated towards coding and stuff like that. So Mr. Abhishek Kumar also has been a mentor for MLH Fellow 2021 and the Developer Check Style and the Code for Cause. He will be there to guide you through the basics of the data structures, exemplifying its importance for your software development projects and its use in the real life. So I hope you enjoy the session right now. He would be joining us at any time soon. The session is to be tentative for the 6 p.m., but we are waiting. So till then, you can join the Discord server in the description. And I welcome you, Mr. Abhishek. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Yatharth. Thank you, Yatharth, for inviting me. And it's really a very great pleasure for me, and it's a great honor for me to be as a guest at DevCon'21, and that's really awesome opportunity for me to speak there. So, welcome once again, everyone here to uh, learn a bit more about data structures and its analogy and its how it is related to the development. So I'll be just starting. So I have to just do a bit of setup. So please uh, forgive me for that time. I'm just taking 1 minute. So I'm just figuring out my pen where it is. It's not there. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining. And let's see if you have any comments. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, throughout the whole of the talk, you can just ask your questions in the comments. I will be very happy to answer those. Okay. So great. So let's start with something. Content not available. So I think everything is now set up. And so I don't know how many of you are into development, or how many of you are into data structures and algorithms. So we always have people, right? So some of them really like data structures and algorithms, some really like development, and another the most premium ones which we all believe really like competitive programming and these spot and code chef code courses thing. So just let me know in the comments what type of you what type of person you are, like if you fall in each of these categories. And if you have any if you have anything, just you can put it in the comments in the YouTube. And I think I can see your comments, right? Yeah, in the right tab. Okay. So today we'll be talking about the importance of data structures and algorithms in development. So before that, let's discuss what is development, and what how the things how the pathways for development is different from the path we follow for data structures and algorithms, and how it is different from someone who is just admiring or approaching towards being better and better in competitive programming. So I just want to tell you these three fields are very much related to each other, and just leaving any of these apart will make problems for you, of course. And if you are good at any of these, you are a great asset for any company, great asset for the country, for yourself too. So let's discuss so when we are doing development, we just do learn a lot of frameworks, right? So if you are an app developer, there are multiple types of developers we have. So some of you may know about app development, some of you may know about web development, some of you may know about iOS, Android, hybrid application development, cloud native application development, and the list is very long. So in the development thing, there are a lot of different categories in which the development thing, right? Uh, the specialist thing is broken. So before learning anything, when we are especially following the development path, when we are especially aspiring for becoming a developer, we just go and learn different frameworks, right? So if you want to become a good iOS developer, we just learn Swift. If you want to become a good Android developer and we are interested in those things, so we just start with doing things like uh, what we call Java and Kotlin, and and the same holds true for React developers. And then there are a list. Yeah, there's an unending list. So you know uh, the one thing that is common in all these things are all these frameworks are, they all are libraries or frameworks, and they needed to be learned, and they have different syntax, and they have different code practices involved in each of them. So you have to first give your time to learn those frameworks, and then you can just start developing things. But if you don't know, all these things are just they rely and they are built using data structures and algorithms. Everything that is working under the hood is somewhere using the data structures and algorithms, and the related things. So that's why the data structures and algorithms are very important. So there is two things, you create an application and you create your own idea. So if you are creating a to-do application, if you are creating a simple website or something like that, so you may not require a lot amount of logics that is needed to be put into your uh, development thing. You may require only very low things like if you are good at in CSS thing, or if you are good in the whole in kind of development thing, right? Putting pictures onto the web, so you can just create that thing. But think about like if you're creating your own idea, you have your idea in your mind that is a lot more specific to serving some people or serving some use case. So that may require a lot of logic building, right? So what if there are multiple requests coming from different peoples? What if there are concurrency, and what if there are clashes, etc., etc.? So whenever we are dealing with a lot of logic, there is always a space for uh, the thing called data structures and algorithms, because that is the only way we have uh, where we can think of like where we can think within the pace of the computer science. So if you don't know, whenever we are doing data structures and algorithms, we are training our minds, we are training us, a user, a whole human being, to think like how computer thinks, right? So computer thinks in the form of binaries. They go step by step. They just do only things that that they're told to. They never do extra, they never do less, right? So that's how that's what we learn while we are doing data structures and algorithms. We provide the use cases before getting to the solution. We describe our use cases, we describe our different scenarios, and then do calls and calls and calls. So that's how computers work behind the scenes, and that's what we learn while doing data structures and algorithms. So that's why it is very important. So it kinds of covers a very fundamental part of computer science. So if you are a computer science student and you don't know data structures and algorithms, so that is a big time fault. And but since like it is very important to think like a computer if you are programming something for the computers or for the humans. So the data structures and algorithms just help you in that thing, right? So this is how it is. And if you have any more questions, you can just ask in the comments, or is it fine for everyone? Yeah. Yes. So one thing, like DSA, data structures and algorithms, is not a prerequisite for development, for sure. So if I tell about myself, I really don't have any idea of data structures and algorithms in my first and second year of college, and still I was able to just do the development thing. But once I just started learning the data structures and algorithms, I believe there is a huge transformation in me in the development thing. So of course, data structures and algorithms is not the prerequisite for development. So if you're just starting to go towards a path of development and you want to learn more about development, so it's not important for you to have data structures and algorithms already in your bag to like it's not at all the one and only required thing that you should have before learning any new technology or anything else. So it's more like a fundamental. If you have that thing, like that adds a lot of value to you. If you don't have that thing, it's all also okay. You can learn those things after that. So it should not be something that should be stopping you from doing the development thing. So yeah, so there are a lot of areas. Yeah, so one question from the bunch, like if I'm a developer, in which areas I will be using the data structures. So if you're a developer, you may have already developed many apps. So whenever we are developing a front end heavy applications, like so it's more like a static web page. So we are just showing some images, videos, and things on the internet. So it's not very much important to it's not very much required to put your data structures and algorithms knowledge or practices onto that thing, because that's not at all required. If you have a good knowledge about how to put divs and how to just align things with the CSS, you are good to go with it. But once you start doing backend stuff, so backend heavy thing is like how your server responds to various requests by the user. So it involves a lot of logic, right? So whenever you are doing that thing, especially backend development thing, then you require a lot of data structures and algorithms knowledge. Because whenever you are creating your own server and whenever you are storing your own data, it's total your responsibility to store that data, to arrange that data for your customers, and then to query and then deliver to your end users. So you have to think every possible way the request could be made, and in every possible way the response could be delivered, the best response could be delivered. So in that case, storing data is very much important, because you have endless pool of resources, and from there you have to just give a small amount of thing to your user. So that's where the data structures and algorithms thing come into picture. And if you are a developer, that's where you will be applying your data structures and algorithms knowledge. So of course, I have done data structures, and like I have paid in what I call, what we can call, like uh, I have paid interest in it very lately in data structures and algorithms. But once I before that, if I had to do a very slight thing, I have to just search for all the Stack Overflow things, like uh, I have to do things in a long way, the hard way, to make very short thing possible. But once we get to learn about data structures and algorithms, so we kind of train our mind to think like how the things are working under the hood in the computer science world. So we may came across a lot of things like sets. So whenever we have a duplicate data, it should not be inserted into a database. So users are users, they could just click your submit button 6 times, 8 times, 10 times. So what will happen, like if they clicking on 10 times, the request and the database file, like the whole of the thing is saving into your database 6 or 10 times. So that's not the that should not be the case, right? So you have to use sets, right? So set is for like it automatically checks for the redundant value, and in the form of behind the scenes it uses hash tables. So this is how like data structures and algorithm eases the path to a good building, to a good logic inside the development. So whenever there is a logic part that is extensive, heavy, like that is heavily emphasized, right? So whenever there is a logic part, you will be needing the data structures and algorithms. And yes, so up until now, if you have any questions, like no. So yes. Mhm. Okay. So I guess this question has been already been sorted out. So I just told about it, like how we, in which areas the data structures and algorithms knowledge will be useful as a developer. So if you're doing something really logical, if there is a lot of logic involved in your code, and if there is something, if you have a good amount of resources and pools, and you have to just pick a very short amount of that to show to the end user, you have to store that data into a good in a structure type that is good for uh, picking up just a small piece of data from there, right? So just think about a situation where your data is stored into chaos, right? So anything is stored anywhere. So how you will just filter out your data? You have to just take back, like just move to all the things in the all the things available in onto your database. Then you have to pick like a very minor thing. But if you have that data stored in some manners, if you have your data stored on the index basis, like, so it's that indexing and data, it's a concept of database, and that also built upon the concept of data structures and algorithms and arrays. So if you have the indexing thing, so you can just pick your data in a very less time compared to if you have your data stored like chaos, right? So that's where the data structures and algorithm things comes into handy while doing development, right? So yes, and secondly, like, so just think about the good development project, like what's the good projects, like what's the really great projects you see around the world. So if you will call, like if you are using social media like Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and there are a lot many, right? So if you're seeing these all are development projects, they are all developed, they don't use data structures and algorithms. No, that is not correct, since they extensively use data structures and algorithms. So as I just as we just discussed, like whenever there is a requirement of something that is not yet built, and that requires an additional logic upon the top of the product, so that requires you to think in an algorithmic, in a computer friendly way, and that's where you train your mind when you do data structures and algorithms, DSA. So just think about Facebook. So Facebook, you have your friend recommendations coming for you, right? So whenever you have one friend, then there is one other mutual friend, then there's friends of friends, then this list goes on, right? So how the Facebook suggests, like just be the friend with him or be the friend with her. So it's where they just manage to do it with the help of graphs, right? So graph is a part of data structures and algorithms, DSA, and it's one of the very useful data structures and algorithms. Sorry, it's one of the very useful data structure that is used extensively while you are doing any type of connections between two nodes, between multiple nodes, and anywhere else, right? So friend list and Google Maps, maybe one or two the big examples. It may be the big examples that may be like seen by you, that may have been experienced by you in your day-to-day life. So yes, what topic should I cover if I'm a developer? So if you are a developer, basic knowledge of data structures and algorithms could suffice you. But since if you're like if you're looking for a good development job, or if you're looking for a good software engineering job, you may have to go for a deep knowledge of data structures. But if you are a developer, you should just learn about arrays, because array is one of the most used thing inside the development. Arrays and objects, right? So whenever you're talking about JavaScript, Django, Flask, and anything related, so they all use an extensive amount of objects and arrays. So it may be called dictionaries in Python. I don't know, because I very rarely use Python. So if you have a good knowledge about arrays and objects, then it's really great for you to be it will help you extensively in your development path. And yes, so okay. So do we have someone else here, or yes, lists? Okay, yeah. So in Python, it is called lists. So Vedanti is like he's a cloud ready facilitator, and he knows a lot of things about Python. So he's a Python developer, right? So he's just talking about lists. So we call arrays list, like we call arrays as list in Python. So yeah, that's the analogy. And being a developer, if you are developing something like if you are like when you are a developer, you use a lot of libraries that are already pre-built, right? So if I'm a web developer, I may be using Material UI library, or some React Bootstrap libraries, right, for the CSS thing. And if I'm handling some datetime functionality, I may be using det FNS libraries. There are a lot of libraries for those things, right? So whenever you have to customize something, you should require something extra for that thing, because you get a lot of things pre-built, and that's what make your apps common to other. But whenever you have to make your app a little different from other things, like so you have to customize that things. So whenever you are on verge of customizing that things, if you have a good knowledge of data structures and algorithms, you will just pick those customizations very easily in a very friendly way. And while you are reading someone else's code, and if you already know about like what the things are doing, so it's really a great plus point, right? So, for example, development is just not related to web development that you see like using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's not only related to Android development that may be related to Java, Kotlin. It's not only related to other things like Swift, hybrid application, and cloud native application development. So, development is a much more worse field, right? So, it's much more really big and vast field that requires an extensive knowledge of everything, right? So, the main question arises here, like I just see a lot of questions, or even I had that question in my mind some months ago, like so if everyone is doing development inside like everyone is doing development after joining office or joining their jobs or any multinational or startup or anything, any company, they have to do the development thing. So why it is required for them to why interviews are based entirely or mostly upon the data structures and algorithms? I was really very curious, and I really personally had this question with me. So they are required because data structures and algorithms trains your mind to think in a way computer thinks, right? So you are programming, you are whenever you are developing software, you are programming things for the computers, and you are making some software, you are making some products, right? So you are telling the computer to do this thing for them. So what if you don't know how computer thinks? What if you don't know what will make this thing efficient? What if you don't know this if it is if the code that you're writing is just slowing down your whole of the server, it is extensively using your computer resources and computation power, right? So there's two way to hold your nose, like just here or this way. So if you don't know the data structures and algorithms, and if you don't know how computer thinks and how computer behaves, what is good practices, you are just holding your nose from in this way, right? So that's why being good at data structures and algorithms help you in a lot of many ways. And it's not very required like you should be very good at data structures and algorithms for getting any positions or any development position, but you should never just underestimate it, you should never just overlook it, right? So personally we had the problem like whenever someone is like good at development, they just overlook the data structures and algorithms part. So it's not going to help in the long run, since these are the things that are one of the most fundamental things for the computer science, right? So all the other things are built upon these things, right? So all the other infrastructures that you see today, all the applications level infrastructure, cloud level infrastructure, blockchain, hyperledger, there are a lot many, right? So whatever you see, these are only built upon what are the building blocks of the computer science. What so data structures and algorithms, networking, and that embedded programming, or I'm not getting the correct word, sorry. So these are the most fundamental things that upon which the whole infrastructures that you see today, whatever things you are seeing today, which is possible, is built upon, right? So if you just don't know about how these things are working and what's the base reason behind it for working the way they are working, so you are missing a lot about the field you are pursuing your degree in, right? So that's why it's important. Okay. So which topics? Oh, okay. So I guess it's already answered, right? Okay, do we have some further question or any more questions? Okay. Hmm. Okay, so let's wait for like 5 to 10 minutes just to get more questions. And if you have any questions related to data structures and algorithms, or anything related or unrelated, like, you can ask, right? If I want to choose a technology which you would be refer. Okay, so which technology you are, like, what you're asking, right? So which technology should I refer if I want to choose a technology? So in what perspective you are viewing technology, right? So I'm quite, it's more about like very general question, like I can't figure out what you mean by technology thing. If you're talking about frameworks, or I don't know if you're talking about frameworks or uh, languages or anything related. But if you talk about just frameworks, for the front end framework, like you have very uh, yeah, React, Angular, Django, Flutter, yeah, these are called frameworks or libraries. So everything has their own importance, right? So React is for web development, and yeah, I'm talking about, yeah, sure. So everything has its own importance, like React, Angular, Django, Flutter. They are all made for some reasons. They all exist for some reasons, right? So they all serves their reason perfectly well. So if you are it's about use case, and it's about the market trend, like how people in the market, how companies are using these technologies. And if you're really passionate about creating your own project, then any of these may work fine for you. If you are thinking of creating a web application, so you may be using React or Angular or Django. If you're already good in Python, you should be going for Django, since uh, Django Flask is Flask Django or Django Flask is like built upon Python. And if you're already good at Python, like most of people already are, so they can just go for Django and Flask, and they are getting quite popular these days. And a lot of jobs and openings are related to Django Flask, so you can definitely learn it. But if you want to just want to try a new language like JavaScript, so I believe like nobody's no JavaScript before starting web development, because the only reason people learn JavaScript is when they're just getting into or stepping into the world of web development, right? So if you want to just step into the world of web development, and uh, if you want to learn a new technology there, so just go for Angular or React. Angular has a bit of a steep learning curve, or its learning curve is a bit high, right? So it's for if you're a beginner in JavaScript, and you if you want to catch the Angular part, so you will find a little bit harder in comparison to React, since React is much more friendly. There is one another framework that is compared with the React and Angular, that is called Vue.js. And Vue.js is mostly community built driven framework, and that has a huge community support. So unlike React, which is backed by Facebook, Angular, which is backed by Google, Vue is completely different. It is backed by a community. Like it has, I guess, I'm not very pretty sure, but it has more GitHub stars than React framework and Angular framework, right? So if you're talking about like building a cross-platform application with a really trendy technology, like Flutter is a very good choice. So Flutter is just used to build a cross-platform applications. So what we mean by cross-platform applications, like so you just build one application, it will run onto your Android device, it will run onto your iOS device, it will run onto your desktop also. So Flutter has recently announced that it will support desktop also. Not recently, but it's a long time. So it's now supporting desktop also, including Linux, Windows, and Mac, both of them, all of them. So should we do data structures in JS? It's totally your call, right? So there's not any problem in learning data structures in JavaScript, but there is one problem, like if you are appearing for the interviews, so many platforms, like the interview supporting platform don't accept JavaScript. So it's not your fault, but it's not very popular to start learning data structures in JavaScript, right? So I believe JavaScript is quite taken as a very funny language, and it has a lot of anomalies. So it has a lot of unusual behavior when you are doing things with JavaScript, because you have a lot many ways to do one single thing, and you may come across a lot of things like a lot of syntaxes. So I don't recommend personally to do data structures in JavaScript as one of your primary language. But if you are willing to do, yeah, you are pretty open to do that. In the JavaScript technical interviews, they ask for something like that. When you are talking about JavaScript, it's very important to know about the basics of like how JavaScript compiler works, how the web, but the just-in-time interpreter JIT, and there are a lot of similar concept, event loops, and all these things. So if you are just into JavaScript, just focus on those things. And data structures and algorithms can be learned in some other languages, because a lot of platforms will not support JavaScript uh, being submitted. Like those things will not be supported in a lot of platforms like Metly. I have just given 2 or 3 of my coding rounds on Metly or something similar. So they don't accept JavaScript. There is only 3 options like Java or C++ or Python. So I won't recommend doing data structures and algorithms in JS for that reason only. Okay. So yeah. Okay, so do we have any further questions here? It's really windy season, right? There's a strong wind here in Delhi. There are a lot of sounds that maybe are coming to your speakers. So sorry for that. And if you have any further questions that is related to any computer science topic, not only related to data structures and algorithms in development or anything in general, you can just ask in these comments and in the comment box, and I'm very happy to answer that.
So how was your journey throughout? How many difficulties you faced? How you overcome them?
Sure. Just one. Sorry. So if I talk about like if you ask about like my journey especially, so I just started my college in 2018. And in the first year, like I did nothing. Personally, I'm very honest with that. Like in the first year itself, I did nothing instead of like sneaking out with friends and just doing all the college stuff that people do, right? And in the second year itself, I just got introduced to community thing, and got introduced to so the first community that I ever joined as a or contributor or as a developer, you can say, is Checkstyle, and there I learned a lot of things, right? So whenever you are indulged into open source community, there is always a chance to learn a huge amount of things from them. So the same thing that's just happened to me, like to like in my first year, I was like literally doesn't know anything about computer science, and when I just got introduced to Checkstyle, I really did a lot of enormous amount of mistakes there. Like but the mentors and the admins were really so cooperative, and they were just like really good, too good. They helped me, and from there I just learned a good code practices and how community works and how software development things proceed. And from there I just get into the code for cause. I just started contributing there and got the opportunity there as an employee. And from there, it's been a pleasure for me to mentoring community project inside the JBoss for the code for cost. So that's how my journey is. Meanwhile, I was MLH fellow. I just applied for in the MLH fellow, in the MLH fellowship, and uh, after the two interviews, I was one of the shortlisted candidates. So that's how, there's nothing fancy in my journey. Well, I have done a lot of mistakes. I remember the first contribution that I did was in the Hacktoberfest, and that was a spammy PR. Okay, so just don't shy away from making the spammy PR if it is your first contribution, but just don't uh, take it as a legacy, right? So don't repeat it. It's really good to go with your first PR as a spammy one, but just don't repeat it. So that's how my journey is. What about Flutter? So Yash has question Flutter. So I was a Flutter intern some years ago, not some years ago, 1 year ago. So I would just tell about Flutter is really a good platform. It's very evolving, and it's been there are a lot of firstly it's backed by Google, and it's a Google specific project, so you can just expect a quality thing from Flutter, right? So as it is as it stands upon all the promises, Flutter just solves everything that is needed for any cross platform application development for you. So if you are good, if you want to learn if you want to make an application that can be run on any devices in the world, so just go for Flutter. React Native is also there, but since Flutter is much more famous right now, and it's being picked majorly, so you can go with Flutter, right? Where to go for core understanding of data structures? Come to Code for Cause. What I will say. So yeah, we are just launching our courses, so you can be there, and there are, if you just want to learn free of cost, if you have, if you're out of some money, or if you want to just grind out the free resources, so there are a lot of resources on the internet. You can just come go there and uh, just pick your things that works better for you. Okay, so there is a power cut and I don't believe my laptop will be live for more than 2 or 3, more than 5-10 minutes. So yeah. Hello.
That was a very inspirational session, sir. Thank you so much for taking out time for us and broadening our knowledge on the importance of data structures for developers. Thank you, sir. And I hope all the attendees enjoyed it a lot and they gained a very big knowledge.
Yes. Thank you once again for inviting me. Personally, it's a great pleasure for me to talk in this prestigious DevCon. So thank you once again, and it was really a great pleasure for me to talk here. And yeah, so it was quite ahead of the time, but it was really fun.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so do we have any further questions, or we can just take your leave?
So I don't think we have more questions here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay.
you, sir.
Nice to see you all, and bye.
Bye. Guys, we will be starting in 2 minutes. Our next speaker will join us soon. Moving ahead, besides the programming skills, we need to work on personal development. Doing teamwork always is a very efficient thing which we all need to know about. It is always an important aspect of personal development. So we are going to start a session of personal development. For this, we have Bart Farrell sir to guide us on personal development. Bart Farrell sir is CNCF ambassador, data on Kubernetes community, and audio visual production. Bart Farrell sir, you can begin now.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. Very nice to be here. Hope everyone's doing well and looking forward to a dynamic session. And once again, thank you very much to all the folks that are involved in the organization, doing a very, very good job. Everything's running quite smoothly, so no complaints. Shall I get started sharing my screen? Are we good?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
And just to double check in terms of timing, I know that we have an hour planned. I've got an hour's worth of material, so that's kind of the idea. Having said that, I just want to make it ultra clear as well, is that I want this to be as interactive as possible. So feel free to ask questions at any point in time. We can also continue the conversation afterwards. I want this to be as hands-on as practical as possible. So while we're talking, it would be really helpful if you could have a piece of paper nearby and a pen where you can open a blank document, something like that to be able to follow along with what we're doing. Because basically what I'm going to be doing is going to be talking about this very big topic, personal development, trying to condense it into about an hour. What I want you to do is, while I'm talking, I want you to go along with me and just write down whatever comes to mind, the different aspects that we're going to be looking at, because I don't want this to be a monologue, all right? I want there to be, like I said, a chance for you to ask questions. if you have any doubts or if you want to share something or things like that. But really, this time is for you. So let's try to work on this together. All right. Let me see. Let me just let me share my screen. Okay. Very, very good. Here we go. So I think you should be able to see my screen now. I'm going to go to full screen mode. Very, very good. So personal development or how to start a rap career at the age of 35, right? By Bart Farrell. That's who I am. That being said, you can definitely check me out on LinkedIn. You can check me out on Twitter. My Twitter name is Birthmark Bart. We'll take a look at all that stuff in a second. And why this thing about starting a rap career, we'll get into that a little bit later. All right. One of the things that I do in terms of my job is we could say outreach or marketing. And I've been able to mix hip hop and do that at the same time, which is something that I really enjoy doing. I can't say that my full-time job is being a rapper, but I've been able to work that in there. All right. So we're gonna be looking at some things that are more theoretical in general, and then other things directly from my personal experience with personal development. And of course, before starting, I have to say is that this is just my perspective on this. I'm not saying it's the only perspective. There are tons and tons of resources, books, etc. out there for anyone who would like to learn more about personal development. I'll mention a couple of things in here in terms of things that are relatively well accepted in terms of different approaches to personal development, but there's not only one way to do this, right? I don't want anyone to feel that this is the exclusive way to do this. Everyone has their own way. I'm going to be sharing with you things that have worked for me, but I'm in no way saying that it's the only way to do it, all right? Everyone kind of has to approach this with their own unique style, if you want to think about it that way. So I will be mixing in some, as I mentioned, rap, enjoying poetry, things like that. I'll be mixing some things in there. So when I reached 35 of age is when I took to the stage, all right? Put the pen to the paper, took advice from a sage. So talking about this is that, I'm 35 years old. I'm sure most of you are not. And I never really necessarily had it in my head, I want to be a professional rapper. But it's just in terms of how things worked in my personal and professional development that I found myself in this position. So during the presentation, I'll have some things here and there so we can kind of reflect on that. And like I said, really be able to kind of mix these things together. That being said, I was already mentioned in the introduction. My name is Bart Farrell. I'm the leader of the Data on Kubernetes community, which is an online community where we have weekly sessions, sometimes more than once a week, talking about this technology, Kubernetes, and how to be managing data, working with data on it, all right? It's a relatively complex topic, but we offer sessions for people of all ages and experiences. We've also been doing a monthly student session. We'll be having another one next week. You are all more than welcome to join if you're interested in these kinds of open source technologies, things of that nature. As was mentioned also in the introduction, I'm a CNCF ambassador. All right, so basically working with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, I'm helping to extend their message and their efforts. All right, so I'm a CNCF ambassador. I work in audiovisual production, meaning I work on projects related to videos. So videos for companies, for government institutions, for universities, all different kinds of things. And you can see some of those things as well in the Data on Kubernetes YouTube channel, if you want to check that out. Passion for people, I would say it's a big characteristic that I have. You'll see that I work a lot with technology, but always from the human side, working in human resources, talent management. I really like working with people and experiencing different ideas. And once again, who said something about rap? Like I said, it is something that I've sort of characterized myself in recent months. But it also comes from a sort of background in music and all things creative. We'll take a look at that a little bit later on. All right. Other stuff about me, in terms of where I'm from, you can probably tell from my accent. I'm from the United States. I'm originally from Northern California, a city called Santa Rosa that's near San Francisco. In 2009, I left the United States, I left California, and I went to Egypt to learn Arabic. From there, after spending 1 year in Egypt, I moved to the West Bank, to Palestine, and lived with a family near Bethlehem for 3 months. Then I moved to London, so I lived in the UK for a year. That's where I got my master's degree. And then I've been spending the last 10 years living in Spain. I live in the north of Spain in an area called the Basque Country in a city called Bilbao. You may know Athletic Bilbao is a football team. But anyway, I've been living here for the last 10 years. My partner is from here. Did I plan on moving here? No, right? But these are all things that have contributed to my personal and professional development, right? These are the things that made me unique And all of you will have your own story, all right? Maybe you are where you're from, you study what you study, you do what you do, but all those different things are going to influence you in your personal development as well as your professional development. I put down here different jobs. I've had lots of different jobs, all right? I had my first job when I was 14. I was a janitor working at a pool, cleaning the grounds, the facilities, etc. Did I expect to spend my entire life doing that? No, but like I said, those different jobs, working in restaurants, doing construction, doing different things in university, have definitely shaped me who I am. I also spent my first 4 years in Spain working as a teacher. That definitely influenced my professional, personal development as well, in terms of interacting with all different kinds of people, helping people learn. Then from there, I have worked, like I said, in tech, and am now leading the Data on Kubernetes community. Different studies, right? I've studied, we can say, sort of non-traditional things. After high school, I went to the University of California in Santa Barbara, and there I got my undergraduate degree in religious studies, right? Not to become a priest, but studying different religions from all over the world, and learning more about history, about culture, sociology, things of that nature. And then my master's degree that I got in the UK, I got in Near Middle Eastern Studies, specializing in the Israel-Palestine conflict and the influence of culture in that conflict. So as you can see, I do all these different things, and then I move that into tech. Like I said, that's how my development has worked. Is it the most traditional or standard way of doing things? Probably not, but it's what's worked for me. And that's what I want to kind of share with you today. There are still some basic questions, structures that we can have in mind that can apply, that I do believe can apply to everybody, despite the fact that, like I said, the details will be different in each particular case. So expectations, right? Basic things that I want to get out of this session. And so I hope that we can do this together. Basic information is, who are you? All right. And when we say who are you, there's much more to that than just, your name. But what we're thinking about there is a deeper sort of look at it about, what it is that you're going for, what represents you, your values, your experiences, who do you want to be, right? So based on, who I am, who I want to be, what are the things, the characteristics that go along with that sort of description or idea? And then based on who you want to be, based on that objective, right? What are the actions that you can take or that you are taking right now in order to get there, right? So simple concepts, not going to go over anything too wild or crazy, but that's why I said very, very helpful to have a piece of paper or an open document so that while we're talking, you can write down your answers to this, and then you can reflect later on. And if you would like, I would be more than happy to do a mentoring session. When I say that, meaning like a quick 15, 20-minute conversation with anybody who would like to talk a little bit more in detail about the things that we're going to be covering in this session, right? So that being said, like I said, pretty straightforward format. We have about an hour planned. I think we should be able to fill up an hour with all the different things we're going to look at. So starting out, who are you? All right, some basic things. All right, there are different things that we can look at. These are just a couple of things. All right, it's not a lot. But these are different ways that we can get to know each other, right? Favorite foods, right? There are lots of different foods out there. We have lots of different cultures. And then we have lots of folks today that are joining us from India. We have traditional foods. We have non-traditional foods. We have fast food. There's lots of different stuff out there, right? But everybody has some kind of food that they like more than others. And some people might like the same thing that you might not like, all right? Next thing, favorite movie or TV series. It could be anything, right? But just think about it. And also think about maybe what that says about you. Do you prefer action series or films? Do you like comedies more, documentaries? There's lots of different stuff out there. Superheroes, all right? We can think about superheroes. We can also think about superpowers. What kind of superheroes do you admire or do you wish you could be like? And once again, what does that say about you, right? Spider-Man isn't the same as Superman or is the same as Thor or same as the Incredible Hulk. They all have different abilities, and that might say something about you and that you might prefer one thing rather than another. Another thing would be a proud moment, right? A moment that's made you proud. It could be something small. It could be something big. It could have happened yesterday. It could have happened 5 years ago. Doesn't matter. It could be getting accepted into university, passing a difficult exam, getting your first internship, whatever, right? I understand that most of the people here in the audience today are quite young. That's not a problem, all right? I want to make that really, really clear. Just because you are young doesn't mean that you haven't had experiences, right? That you haven't acquired knowledge, that you don't have wisdom, that you don't have things you can offer. I do not believe that at all, all right? I'm 35 years old. Most of you are probably around 20. At the age of 20, you've still done a lot of things, right? You've had lots of experiences, lots of moments, thousands, we can probably say millions of moments. So thinking about that, what's a moment that you're particularly proud of in your life up till now, in your personal development? And once again, what does that say about you? That can be an indicator maybe about other kinds of moments that you would like to be experiencing or living in the future. And based on that, what are the things that you would want to do to create a context, to create conditions that will make that more likely to happen? All right. Another moment that's good to think about, a hard moment, right? So very often, or at least I would say in my personal experience, in my life, I've probably learned more from difficult moments than I have from easier ones, right? We think about it that way. So a lot of times it's, challenging experiences that I think can really show us a lot about who we are, about how we overcome difficulties, right? About how we interact, the things that we learn from those hard moments. So like I said, don't run away, all right, from the difficult things. The difficult things will often show us a lot of really good stuff. Something you're afraid of, right? Everybody's afraid of something. It doesn't matter who you are. Everyone's afraid of something. So in my particular case, to look at some examples, favorite food, one of my favorite foods is Spanish omelets, right? Particularly the one that my mother-in-law makes is really, really good. In terms of films and TV series, I put Reservoir Dogs, classic Quentin Tarantino film, and The Wire. All right, I like Reservoir Dogs because of the story, the interaction between the characters, the dialogues, the theme. It's about a robbery. Anyway, The Wire is a TV series about Crime City, Baltimore. And I really, really like it because it has social justice commentary, really good acting. Anyway, once again, those are my preferences. Other people might hate Reservoir Dogs or might really not like The Wire, but that's okay because that's based on things that they enjoy and maybe not the same things I enjoy. In terms of superhero, I put Batman. Why? In my particular case, because Batman at the end of the day is just a person. I like the fact about Batman is that Batman is not a mutant. It's a person who uses tools and uses his intelligence to do what he does, right? Once again, personal preferences. In terms of a proud moment, getting to lead the DOK, the Data on Kubernetes community, has been a very big moment for me in my life because it's been a way to sort of put together a lot of different things that I've done professionally into one space, including, as I mentioned earlier, being able to rap. In terms of a difficult moment, I have a family member who has a chronic illness, and that's been going on since I was 12 years old. So it's now been 23 years of living with that and constantly needing to support, having difficult situations, hard times. But those hard times have taught me, as well as everyone in my family, about the things that we're capable of in order to help each other to get through those difficult moments. In terms of fears, I put 3. I definitely have more. I'm afraid of heights. I'm afraid of bees, which is really strange. I'm afraid of sharks, which is much more rational. But where I'm from in Northern California, we do have a lot of sharks. So it's something that you're always thinking about when you go in the water. And it's something that I always think about even if I'm going swimming in a river or a lake or things like that. Once again, though, these are just things about me. This would be a good time, like I said, keep your piece of paper out or keep a document open, write this stuff down so that we get to know ourselves a little bit better. Sometimes, or I think a lot of times in our life, whether it's social media or things like that, we spend a lot of time reflecting or looking at other people's lives. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to sort of reflect on our own. But if we're thinking about personal development, professional development, if we don't know ourselves, it's going to be pretty difficult to take steps regarding both those kinds of development, all right? So that's why this sort of internal diagnosis is a really healthy thing to do, and you can never really do it too often, all right? So give yourself permission to check in with yourselves every now and again, see what you're doing, see how you're doing, and see where you sort of line up with these things, because these things change. That's the other thing. In terms of how you are and what you believe right now at the age of 20 might be different when you're 30, when you're 40, when you're 50, all right? These things change, sometimes really quickly, sometimes not so quickly, depending on different factors, all right? But just be open to the fact that these things will probably be different. If I think about how I was when I was 20 years old, there are many things that are similar, and there are other things that are quite different. Emotionally, psychologically, in terms of my interests, all those different things. It's a journey, all right? So just enjoy it and don't feel too much pressure to know everything right now, okay? Cool, let's keep going. So who are you? Another thing that this analysis style, SWOT, it has other names in other languages or in other contexts. It's a way to provide a brief analysis, sort of snapshot about who you are in terms of your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and threats. Today, we're just going to be looking at strengths and weaknesses. This analysis can also be used for companies. It can be used for projects. It's good. And the point is to be honest. Nobody is good at everything, all right? Somebody once told me that you have sort of 100 points. You can distribute your points in different areas, but you're never going to have, 100 in absolutely everything, all right? It's life just works out that way. Some people are really gifted with sports. Other people are really gifted with academics. Some people are gifted with both, but then they might not be so gifted socially, or they might have challenges in other areas. Nobody's perfect, all right? So we don't need to worry about that. Weaknesses, it's as important to be conscious of your weaknesses as your strengths, right? If you're going into a situation where you know that you're not very good at something, you can be transparent and say, look, don't have such high expectations on me because I don't have a lot of experience, or naturally this is not something that I find terribly easy, or that you can complement those weaknesses with other people that are good at things. These things are super, super important, all right? You will be in professional contexts where you're not going to be good at everything. And it's much better just to be honest about that in order to control expectations. Opportunities, we always have opportunities, all right? Keep your eyes open. And when I say your eyes open, I really mean your ears too, all right? Listening is not just something you do with your eyes. Be observant, right? Always be thinking about, there are always opportunities. Some may be small, some may be big, but keep that open. And then threats, right? What are different threats? There are lots of different threats. Technological changes can be threats. Economic conditions can be threats. It doesn't mean that we have to be paranoid. We just have to be conscious and aware of the different things that are going to be helping us or creating challenges throughout our personal development. So let's just take a look really quickly at strengths, all right? And how do I know? This is really important too. How do we know what we're good at or what we're bad at? Sometimes we just have our intuition or our personal opinions, but generally speaking, it's really good to contrast that with someone outside ourselves. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be a teacher, it could be a boss, it could be a coworker. These things are really, really good to validate them. And then we can have them reflected in things like your CV or your LinkedIn profile or things like that. But first of all, we just want to ask, what are the things that I'm good at? Everybody is good at something. So I don't accept the answer of, well, I'm just not good at anything. That's not true. All right. That's definitely not true. It's just a question of reflection based on the things that you've seen in your life. Where have you had positive results, right? Has it been in school? Has it been with your friends? Has it been with getting internships, with getting a job, whatever it is that you're doing, all right? In my particular case, I would say that one of my strengths is public speaking. Now, where does it come from? My father is a lawyer. My mom is a psychologist. People in my family in general are good storytellers. It's something that I've grown up with, all right? So it's something that I would say I have a natural tendency towards, but it's also something I've trained. I've taken public speaking classes, having been a teacher for a while. All these things are things that make you comfortable in terms of being in front of people. We'll take a look later on. When I was younger, my parents put me in acting classes. These are some of the things that also make me comfortable speaking in front of groups of people who I don't know, all right? In terms of other strengths that I have, I'm very passionate, I'm very energetic. That's also something I would say that's in my family, right? We generally, when we get involved in things, we're very enthusiastic, put a lot of energy into stuff. This is also something that other people tell me, all right? So these are things that I've detected from hearing from other people. It's really important. Ask for feedback as often as possible, all right? Ask people about how you're doing, what you're doing, because sometimes it's really overwhelming when we don't know if we're doing something well or not. It can be a little bit scary. So these are things that, like I said, it's definitely something. It's definitely something that you want to keep in mind. All right. People are asking, getting some interesting comments here. In terms of improving public speaking skills, a lot of this stuff is a question of practice. Like I said, in my particular case, if you are a teacher, you are obliged to speak publicly. What I want to say about this here, because this is a really good, these are some great questions, is that if we're thinking about this is like, okay, if I want to be a good public speaker, how do I start public speaking? Do I need to start out speaking to 1,000 people at the same time? Absolutely not. All right. Start small. We'll take a look at this later. But before you give a 1-hour talk, it's probably a good idea to first do a talk that's 1 minute. Right. Explain something really basic. Do it in the mirror. Start with your friends. Get practice little by little, and then you can scale your way up. You don't need to feel like you just need to jump into speaking in front of an entire football stadium of people. All right. That's an important thing to keep in mind, whether it's public speaking, whether it's anything else. Try to break it down into smaller pieces so that it's not so overwhelming. All right. To address a second question that's down here, someone asking me, why Batman and why not Iron Man? That's fair, but like I said, that's really just a question of personal preferences. But that's fine. I think Iron Man is a completely respectable superhero. I just prefer Batman. Going back, so creativity. This is something that is in terms of his strengths, being able to put together two things that seemingly don't have a connection, about questioning things and thinking about alternatives or doing things in a different way. Also, the fact that I've lived in many different countries, I think that's helped because you bounce off different ideas with different people. You get to take the best out of different places, which is why I would highly recommend one of the benefits of the CNCF, where I'm an ambassador, is that you will immediately be connected to a very large group of people that are from all over the world. And being able to work with people from different countries is one of the coolest things that you can do, because people approach problems in different ways in different places. And that will make you much stronger and much more open-minded in terms about how you approach things. Just as a quick thing for everybody, if you're interested in any kind of programming or even marketing or whatever, there is something that you can do in the CNCF. And if you'd like to find out more, you can let me know. There are no prerequisites. You just have to be a nice, friendly person who's willing to help out. All right. That's literally all it comes down to. If we want to talk about that later on, we definitely can. In terms of being dedicated, yeah, that's another thing that also I would say kind of runs in my family and goes along with passion and energy of, if I get involved in something, I want to be there 100%. All right. That becomes that can also be a weakness, because you get involved in too many things. You can't be 100% in anything, in everything. And that's what's happened to me. Right. So sometimes it gets very tiring. Now, weaknesses, and we'll often see that, weaknesses and strengths can kind of be connected. All right. So weaknesses is that I'm very passionate and energetic, but because of that, I'm often not very organized. So what does that mean? It means that I need help with that. I need other people who can complement those skills that I don't have. And also just being, once again, transparent. Be transparent about what you're good at and what you're not so good at. You don't have to say I'm terrible at organization. Just say there are things that I do better, or it's something that I'm working on. All right. You always want to try to have some kind of a plan. In my plan, I'm lucky enough that I have a team of people, and one of the people is basically a project manager who's extremely organized and makes sure that I'm on top of everything. All right. Another weakness that I have is getting distracted. Part of being energetic and creative is that sometimes you can get lost in your own thoughts. You can get distracted. And the third point, which also relates to the other two, is focusing on the start and not on the end. Right. Sometimes being really energetic and thinking about starting something and pushing something, but then sometimes not focusing enough on the delivery, right? Which, once again, then getting people that are more, end focused is helpful, because that complements those skill sets, right? Very, very good. We're getting some more questions. Good. Okay, because Dipanshu was asking about, which is a very good question, about creative ideas to introduce yourselves for making your personal brand. This is something we'll get to later, but once again, by doing this, by reflecting, all right, and getting to know yourselves better, this is what we're building, all right? We're building your personal brand right now. What's important is that everyone needs to be authentic, which is why doing the strengths and weaknesses reflection is very, very helpful, because it's not that everybody needs to be like everybody else. Everybody needs to be themselves, right? I have my own unique identity, which has been formed by a lot of different things, and all of you do as well, right? So let's take this thinking about personal brand. This ties in very well to your question, Dipanshu. So are you experienced? Of course you're experienced, right? All of you have been alive for probably around 20 years. You have many different friends. All of those friends have an impact on you. Think about your best friends, right? What is the impact that your best friends have had on you in terms of who you are as a person? It could be your political beliefs, helping you get through a difficult time, showing you what you're good at, showing you what you're not so good at, different things like that. Everybody has a different family, right? There are no two families that are the same. They are all different. Think about the impact that your family has had on you. What kind of family do you have? Are you the youngest? Are you the oldest? Whatever your parents done for work, all those different things have an influence on you. Your school, right? Where you studied. We're talking about primary, talking about secondary, talking about university as well. What kind of college do you go to? All those different things influence you too, all right? The physical location of all these things as well, right? What city do you live in? What part of the country do you live in? The climate. I mean, there are a million different factors that can influence this stuff, all right? But what I'm trying to say here is that it's really, really important to keep in mind the different impact that all those different things can have on you, all right? Oops, sorry. Then, in terms of hobbies, right? What do you like to do in your free time? That says a lot about you, all right? How did that start out? What are the things that you enjoy? I put the pandemic here, and I insist on this. The pandemic has been a very hard experience for all of us. We've all lived through it in a different way, right? Depending on the different countries. But what I want to say is that the pandemic has given us very hard, very challenging, but also very valuable experiences to adapt, right? To accept lots of different difficulties. All of you that have been studying, that's obviously been a big challenge there as well, to moving to online formats, all those different things. But what I want to say about that is that those experiences it's gonna have an impact on you for the rest of your lives, all right? So think about it. What have I learned about myself during the pandemic? How have I been dealing with the flexibility that's been necessary, the stress that's been necessary, okay? Those are the things we want to keep there. Then connect the dots, right? Just as the last thing, I will invite all of you to check out the Steve Jobs speech called Talking About Connecting the Dots, right? Where he makes the point about how the impact that one day of calligraphy class had on him years later, right? He went to a calligraphy class for one day when he was in university, when he was dropping out of university. And much later on in his life, right, when he was starting at Apple, that calligraphy course had an influence on the type of font, right, the scripts that they were creating for Apple. And based on that, that was one of the key things that helps Apple differentiate itself from other companies. So something that seems meaningless, like spending one day in a calligraphy class, later on had a huge impact. And what I want to say about that is that if you all start tracing different little moments of the impact that it has on you, then that's something that you're going to see, all right? Connect those dots. Never write, basically think of it this way. There is no such thing as a waste of time. Even if something seems a waste of time, it's teaching you patience, it's teaching you understanding, it's going to help you make better decisions in the future so that you don't find yourself in a situation like that. Just treat it that way, okay? Cool, let's keep moving. We all need a mirror for our vision to be clear, to keep ourselves within view, and the truth is nearer. What is this mirror that I'm talking about? The reflection that I've been saying the whole time. Get this stuff down, all right? When it's all in your head, it's kind of tough. When you externalize it and you get it on a piece of paper, it's much easier to interact with, okay? So that's why I really, really insist on that. There are different ways of doing this. What's important is the element of reflection about where you are in your personal development and where you want to be. And based on that, what are the decisions that you're going to be making, all right? Cool. Let's keep going. So where do you want to be? All right. So we got a little bit of an idea about who you are. Now the question is, where do you want to be? And this quote, start with the end in mind, is a quote from a book by Stephen Covey. The book is very famous, called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And one of the first quote things that he starts out with is start with the end in mind. Based on what it is that I want to do in terms of my personal development, how does that end look? Right? What do I imagine? Do I imagine a person with a big house or with a job in another country or who's living in a community or whatever? What is it, right? But think about that. Based on that end that you have in mind, where are you right now and how are you going to get there? Okay. So like I said, this is what we want to be thinking about. So where are you in terms of your daily activities? What do you do on a daily basis? Do you wake up every day at the same time? Do you, what are your hobbies, right? What do you like to do in your free time? Do you play music? Do you read books? Do you play video games? Do you like to do creative stuff? Do you draw? Do you sing? I don't care, whatever it is. Your relationships, all right? With your friends, what kind of social activities do you have? Your physical health, right? What kind of sports do you do? When I say sports, I mean any kind of physical activity. It could be walking, it could be yoga, it could be Pilates, it could be swimming. I don't care, whatever it is, but something related to your physical health. Also, your mental health, extremely important, and something we've talked a lot more about since the pandemic. Mental health is the same as physical health. Sometimes your arm might hurt because you exercise a bunch. Sometimes your head might hurt. I'm not saying in a physical sense, but like your mental health will fluctuate in similar ways to your physical health. So just be mindful of that, okay? It's a very, very important thing to keep in mind. Other things to keep in mind as well, your diet. I know you're all young, but it's never too early to think about this stuff. Your sleeping habits, all right? It's probably unlikely that you will sleep too much, all right? At least in my personal experience, sleep is something that I think I have underappreciated in the past. And definitely I'm trying to appreciate more now because it definitely makes a difference. The difference between sleeping 5 to 6 hours a night, sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night is a big one, right? Also, habits, news, reading. How do you get your news? Do you get it on Twitter? Do you watch TV? Do you get it from your friends? Do you read blogs? How do you do that, all right? Everyone's going to have a different approach. And so that's why the answer to these questions, of course, is going to be different, all right? Now, thinking about starting with the end in mind, what's the definition of success? So if we're thinking about personal and professional development, how do we define that? So let's look at some of these different areas. Your friendships, all right? What's the definition of success when we're applying it to friendship? That you have a lot of friends, that you have a few close friends. Everyone's going to have a different approach to that. In terms of family, all right? What's your definition of success there? What kind of relationships do you want to be having with your family, all right? In terms of your physical health, all right? What's the definition of success there? In terms of mental health, all right? Same kind of thing. In terms of studies, in terms of hobbies. Now, you might be thinking, Normally when we think about success, one of the things that's generally going to come first is money. Money can be a way to measure success. Money should not be the only way to measure success. There's too much of an obsession about money, all right? I would say is a general thing. And I think I would always say that the richest people I know are not the happiest people I know, all right? So money and happiness can be synonymous in up to a certain extent, right? But it's not the only thing. And very often I would say that money is a byproduct of being successful in all these different elements, all right? If you have good relationships, good friendships, if you're physically healthy, if you're mentally healthy, if you feel like you're passionate and engaged with what you're studying, it's important to have free time as well to do things that aren't related, just to be focused on work and studying all the time, to have that nice balance, all right? Those are the things that I think will give a much more complete sort of experience, life experience, and also relating to your personal and professional development. So like I said, don't just be focused on money. Also, particularly at your age, it's going to take time, all right? You have to be patient. There are some people who will get rich really quickly. It happens a lot. There is a very strong element of luck involved in that, depending on your contacts, your connections, who your family is, things like that. A lot of other things, it's going to take longer, but don't obsess over being in a rush, all right? Just because you're not exactly where you would like to be when you're 25 doesn't mean you're not getting there, all right? In my personal experience, I bounced around a lot. I did not expect to be 35 years old running a technological community about data on Kubernetes when I was 20 years old, all right? And not when I was 25 years old, and probably not really that much when I was 30 years old, all right? It's just how things have kind of worked out in my personal experience based on my personal and professional development, all right? So that's what I want to say about that. Don't be in too much of a hurry, but think about this. What is my definition of success? Your definition. I'm not saying just your parents or your universities or your societies. What is your definition of success? It's really important that it comes from you. Next thing, values, all right? So to get a better idea about who we are and what's going to be driving us, values. And when I'm talking about values, I'm talking about respect, community, passion, family, creativity, all these different kinds of things. If you just want to look up a list of values, take a look, all right? And an interesting exercise is, so you can start out by choosing 10, then choose 5, choose 3. In the same way that companies have values, people have values too. And your values are not going to be the same as mine. Maybe some of them might be similar, but for them to be exactly the same, it could happen, right? It could happen. It's certainly possible. But generally speaking, our values are different. There aren't good values and bad values. There are just different values, right? For example, Donald Trump has values. I don't share his values, but he has values and mine are different, right? Based on my experience, because it's different from his. Everybody has different values, right? But values are important to keep them in mind, right? They center us. They provide us with that identity. So if we're talking about personal branding, that's going to be there, all right? Your values should be clear through your personal brand, right? And you can make that clear by having them on your LinkedIn, right? If companies see that you're representing your values first, that's a way of being very upfront and transparent about who you are. And you should also keep that in mind because, for example, not everyone would work for a software company that works on weapon systems. Not everyone would work for a hardware company that designs hardware for gambling companies, right? But other people would, and that's totally fine because that's their choice based on their values. But it's a very important question to keep in mind. If you're going to go work at a company, ask them or look at their webpage. Every company nowadays has their values on there. Think about when you're thinking about where you want to work and what you want to be doing, is this place aligned with my values? Keep that in mind, all right? Because values motivate us, right? If we feel like our values are well connected to the group of people that we're around or the place where we're working, generally speaking, it's going to make us more motivated and it's going to help us more with our personal and professional development, all right? So what are yours? Choose 3. I don't care what they are. It could be anything, all right? And also values can change over time. It's not necessarily a static thing. So don't worry about it if you feel like, well, it used to be this and now it's that. That's okay, all right? This is an ongoing conversation. If you're getting anything from this, you need to understand that what you think today could very well change tomorrow or in a few years from now, but don't worry about that. The main thing is to have this open conversation about your personal and professional development. Okay, cool. Let's keep moving. Now, this is paraphrasing from a quote. So after 1,000 days of training, one becomes a beginner. After 10,000 days of practice, you're an expert and a winner. The real quote doesn't go exactly like that because it doesn't rhyme, but I just like this sort of rapping poetry kind of thing. Masato Oyama was a very famous Japanese karate expert who's like a super black belt, very, very well trained. And he had this quote where he said that it's after 1,000 days of practice, right? after 1,000 days of training is when you start to become a beginner. And after 10,000 days of practice is when you become an expert. All right. So what I want to say about that is that think about it this way, whether it's Leo Messi, whether it's Bill Gates, whether it's a famous musician in your country, I don't care who it is. All those people that are really, really good at what they're doing have spent thousands of hours, all right? Thousands. I know this because it's true, all right? There are some people that are naturally gifted at some things, but nobody gets anywhere without practicing a lot, right? You always will have to practice more time than you would like to, or more time than you might think than you would. But generally speaking, anyone who's really good at something, anyone who's a really good author, their first book was probably terrible, right? You have to write a lot and a lot and a lot and get editing and correction and things like that. And working in software development is not different, right? You have to write thousands of lines of code. You have to put in tons of pull requests. You will fail many, many times, and that's okay because it's part of the process. Nobody picks up a guitar without having ever practiced a lot and can just immediately play everything. It doesn't work that way. Believe me, I play guitar, all right? So what I want to say about this is, while you'll be very energetic, while young people are very, like I said, very excited about getting moving, be fair to yourselves and don't feel like there's a gun to your head making you get everything ready to go already, right? It's going to take time, and that's okay. It's not a big deal. You have to enjoy the process. Very, very important there. Another quote that we have, that Rome wasn't built in a day. If we think about all these things, running a marathon, nobody runs over 40 kilometers in one go without working their way up. If you don't, you know what happens if you try to run a marathon without properly training? You will injure your legs very badly, all right? And you can even have serious problems with exhaustion. It's not recommendable, all right? So to get there, you got to work your way up. It's the same thing with giving a talk, all right? Before you give a talk that's 10 minutes, it's probably good to practice giving a talk that's 1 minute. Record yourself, tell people to give you feedback, all that kind of stuff. Playing a symphony by Beethoven on the piano, and coincidentally, I have my Super Casio keyboard right here. If I wanted to learn how to play that, it's going to take time, right? It's not a big deal. Same with getting a PhD. It takes years to get a PhD, all right? It takes the better part of a decade, all right, generally get a PhD. Why? Because it takes a long time, all right? You have to build a very strong case doing a lot of research. So what I want to say in all this is don't feel like you have to get everything all at once. The trick is getting out there and getting experience. Once again, if you want to get experience with the CNCF, all you got to do is contact me. I'd be happy to plug you into the CNCF ecosystem. There are no prerequisites, all right? The main thing that's important there is being excited, having good energy, and being willing to work, all right? But that's what I want to say about this in terms of personal branding, all this kind of stuff. Get some personal projects going. Start a blog, create a mobile application. It doesn't matter if it's good or if it's bad. Having worked in human resources and talent management, somebody comes into a job interview wanting to be a software developer. It's great that they have a university degree. What I want to see is their GitHub repo, that they've written a blog here and there, that they're active on Twitter, that they ask questions, that they post stuff, that they're not afraid to make mistakes. Those things to me are much more important than a university degree, all right? University degrees tell us something, but they don't tell us everything, all right? And good companies generally know how to differentiate between one and another, all right? So like I said, getting experience is super important. And it doesn't mean that you have, at your age, it's impossible to have 15 years experience doing something because you haven't been alive that long. So don't worry about it. The main thing is to be able to show with your personal brand that you're actively doing stuff, that you're being proactive in different ways. Not everybody has to give talks. Not everybody has to write blogs. Not everybody has to develop a mobile application. I'm not saying that there's only one way to do it. It's just doing something, all right? That's what's important, okay? Cool. Let's keep moving. Next one, same kind of thing, all right? So if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, 4 hours of axe sharpening is what you would see. I turned this into a rhyme. It's not the original quote, but Abraham Lincoln said, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend 4 hours, right? The first 4 hours sharpening my axe, right? Not just running up to the tree and start cutting it. What we're saying here is get prepared, all right? Put in the work, join a community, participate, find whatever it is that you're good at and extend it, all right? That's why we're starting with this diagnosis, this sort of snapshot to see where you are, so you can see what are the things that I can add? How can I build on that? I've given a talk once. What's the next talk that I could give? I've organized a meetup one time. What's the next one that I could do? Think about that kind of stuff, right? Think about how you can be building on that brand, right? To be sharpening that axe, to make your skill set stronger. And always being patient with yourself and not expecting everything just to come all at once, right? These things take time, and it's going to take more time than you want. Believe me, I'm a very impatient person, and if I could, I would definitely have everything all at once. That's just not how life works and not how personal development works. Think about long-term processes, okay? Cool. So sharpening your axe, what are things that you can do to make that happen? What should you do more of? In my particular case, I should study programming more. I know that, right? It's something that I need to do because it's very beneficial for my job. I need to study more technical stuff because it's the part that I'm not good at, right? What should I do less? You could say I should drink less coffee. I should spend less time on Instagram. I should not spend so much time on TikTok. I should whatever. Just be conscious of that. It's generally eliminating something 100%, you can do it, right? But also maybe just reducing stuff so you can spend more time doing things that are more productive and useful for your personal development, all right? My best habit is, for example, I connect with a lot of people every week, all right? And for me, that's a very beneficial habit because my job is about building a community and connecting with people, doing what I'm doing right now. My worst habit is, that's a good question. If I have to think about my worst habit, I probably have more than one worst habit, but one of them is probably definitely worrying too much and getting a lot of anxiety about things that if I don't get them out and interact with other people and ask them about it, tend to get very overwhelming for me. All right. So this is, like I said, these are things that in my particular case are things that I would keep in mind. In your particular cases, it's going to be different. All right. Now, making moves. This is where we can relate this a little bit more to your personal brand, online as well as offline. Now, because of the pandemic, we've been mostly doing online. But in the next few months, as things start to calm down in different places, there will be more offline opportunities. What I want to say about that is online. Do you tweet? Do you post on LinkedIn? Do you put comments to stuff on LinkedIn? Do you put relevant comments to things on LinkedIn and on Twitter? Something I want to say about young people that happens a lot, all right? Don't jump into a Slack channel and say, how can I get an internship? Or how can I do this? All right? It's good that you're interested, but generally what we want to see is that you've done a bit of homework, right? If someone comes to the Data on Kubernetes community and says, hey, I saw this talk and I found it really interesting, and if you want to ask the speaker some questions about it, that's a really good way to do it. If you run in and say, what's Kubernetes? It's like, well, you can find that out on your own. I can't tell you the amount of times that, that we get asked questions sometimes. And so you turn people back to the frequently asked questions document, read the document in anything related to open source. First thing you do, read the documentation. Even if you don't understand it, write down your questions and then ask questions based on those doubts, right? If you just rush into something without having done a little bit of homework, that's generally not going to be the best way to get some help, right? But what I would say about that is, like I said, CNCF, tons of opportunities. It doesn't matter if you just started programming, right? All you have to do really is attend some kind of a meeting. And if you're just friendly and you're there to help out and there to listen, that's more than enough, right? That's how you get started. Just basically with an hour a week, that's more than enough. Other things that you can do. You can read, you can write, you can share, you can program, all different kinds of things. But that your particular strategy is going to be different from mine, all right? But just think about that. What are the things that I can be doing to develop myself further, all right? Is it attending courses? Is it, like I said, it's going to be different for everybody. Second one, get some kind of a mentor, all right? Whether a mentor could be someone who's 6 months older than you. It could be someone who's younger than you, who has more experience than you. It could be a teacher. It could be a coach. It could be someone in the professional world. It doesn't matter, but some kind of a mentor to be able to work with at some point in time, even if it's once a year, it doesn't matter. But just someone who you can connect with and sort of share ideas with and say, this is where I'm at. This is where I'd like to go. It doesn't have to be anything even terribly formal, but just take the time to do it, all right? And with that in mind, with having a mentor, get feedback. It's very difficult to know if what we're good at and not good at if we don't have some source of feedback to someone say, hey, after observing you, I've noticed a few things. You do these things really well. I've noticed that you have difficulties with some other things. It's very helpful when it comes from outside. So getting feedback from as many different people as possible is extremely, extremely useful. And the fourth part, like I said, enjoy the ride. Remember, this is going to be a long-term process. What I'm talking about here is the habits and things that you can get used to doing right now related to your personal development are things that you can do for the rest of your life. But start creating those habits now, and then it's going to be way easier in the future, right? So just keep that in mind. And once again, your strategy doesn't need to be copying and pasting somebody else. It needs to be what works for you, okay? Good. So really silly thing, going back to connecting the dots in terms of my rap career as an example of personal and professional development. When I was a child, my parents put me in acting classes, all right? Because of how I was, because whatever, because I like to be the center of attention, I don't know what, all right? that gave me a lot of skills, right? At a very young age, in the sense of having to memorize lines, understanding characters, learning about Shakespeare, doing all these different things. Is it something that a lot of companies will require? No, as a hard skill, but these are soft skills that are really, really useful, right? For many, many different things. Other things that have helped me as well too. When I was 8 years old, my parents made me play piano. I didn't really like it, but I learned basics of music. When I was 12, they made the mistake of asking me if I would like to choose an instrument. So of course I chose the drums. From there, I started to learn how to play guitar. And then using an MPC, which is what I used to make hip hop beats. All right, I started doing that 6 years ago. I've always liked poetry, and I've taken poetry classes in high school and also in university. And so when I started the Data on Kubernetes community, one of the things that I thought about, I was like, okay, I really like rapping. There's nobody else making raps about this kind of stuff. And I think it would be a cool way to mix technological concepts with something that's more, we can say day to day, because hip hop is quite popular. So start mixing those things. And it's worked really, really well. It gives us a unique piece of branding and identity in order to attract people to our community. In the same way that I'm doing that, you can all do something in a similar way that works for you. So that's why I'm talking about your personal brand. Embrace the things that make you different. Don't just try to be another university student, all right? Because there are tons of university students. You have to try to find something that makes you stand out, all right? What's the thing that makes you really special? Like I said, in my case, it's really easy. The crazy guy from California with long hair who makes rap about Kubernetes. What's going to be your thing that's going to help you stand out, right? That's the thing that definitely works for me. And then that way has helped me get to know a lot of different people from a lot of different companies, okay? But it's really, really helped me identify what that unique part of my personal brand is. This has taken time, all right? This didn't happen like that. So what I want to say about that is, like, don't worry if what makes you unique today isn't the same thing that's going to make you unique in 10 years. It can evolve, it can change. Just be open to that, all right? That's why, going back to this number 4, enjoy the ride. So what now? Super easy, all right? Reflect on what we talked about, all right? We talked about a lot of stuff, but essentially is, first of all, this diagnosis. Who am I, all right? What are my strengths, my weaknesses? What are things that I like to do? What are things that I don't like to do? Be open and honest with yourselves, right? It's really, really important. There's first that first sort of contact of consciousness, awareness of the things that you like to do and the things that you don't like to do, right? Things that you are passionate about, things, your values, all right? Extremely, extremely important to keep that in mind. The second one, be proactive, all right? If you're just sitting waiting for a bunch of stuff to change, it's probably not going to happen. You need to be part of that change. Small moves, contacting someone, attending a course, attending a talk, being in an event like this one, organizing an event like this one, even if it's small, even if it's just one thing, do something, all right? Get involved in the CNCF, join a SIG, that's a special interest group. There are tons of different opportunities out there. You just need to find the one that works for you, all right? It's not one size fits all. I'm not saying that everyone needs to do the same thing. Everyone needs to do what works best for them. Third one, if you want, I would be more than happy to sit down and do a quick mentoring session to learn more about you, to learn about the things that you're doing, and to establish a bit of an action plan so you can apply these concepts directly and really put them into practice, right? So I would be totally happy to do that. In order to contact me, I'm pretty easy to find. All right, on LinkedIn, my name is Bart Farrell. You can check out the Data on Kubernetes community. That's our website. We're also on Twitter. We have our Slack channel. Dipanshu is in there. This is how we met each other. You can, like I said, you can jump in Slack. You can contact me there. You can also follow me on Twitter. You can DM me on Twitter. My name is Birthmark Bart. I'm really easy. Like I said, should be pretty easy to find. That being said, we're pretty good. I guess I did pretty good on time. And yeah, so like I said, oh man. Let's see. Oh gosh. Asking for a wrap. How about I promise to do this? I would be happy to make a summary wrap of the things that we talked about today. I can record that next week, and put that out to you guys if that sounds okay. Oh wow, now we're starting to get more requests for a wrap. Okay, so everybody really wants a wrap. Well, the thing is, not having something prepared, this is a little bit difficult. How about if you, while we're doing this, I will literally do this right now as we speak. All right. All right. Hold on one second. All right. All right, so just improvising really quickly. Let's see. Okay. Personal brand, keep the game in your hand, mix it up fresh, never getting it bland. Got these castles in sand, got me like supply and demand, chocolate fate all day, and this was totally unplanned. There we go. I hope you enjoyed that. I had fun writing it. Anyway, I will record. I promise that I will record a full rap next week. We'll put that on YouTube. I'll pass it on to Dipanshu. Thank you so much for all of your attention. This is a wonderful event. Very happy to have been able to participate. Once again, big shout out to all the organizers. Organizing events is not easy. It's something I've been doing for the last 6 years. So I definitely respect anyone who's willing to organize an event. Very, very nice being with all of you today. And like I said, I hope to be able to connect. Twitter, LinkedIn, jump in the Data on Kubernetes Slack. Very, very interested in engaging with all of you. And enjoy the rest of your day. I will stop sharing my screen so that if whoever needs to jump on next to get the next talk going. Like I said, I finished a little bit early, but I think that was all right. I don't want to just sign off here and leave everybody in the dark. Thank you all for your wonderful comments. Seriously, I love doing this stuff with young people because of the freshness, because of the excitement, because of the willingness to get involved in different things. I just really want all of you, don't be like, the biggest thing that you can be afraid of is being inactive, right? Just be proactive. Do something, try something. And if it doesn't work, don't worry, right? Then you can iterate and shift to something else. You don't need to feel like it's going to require a huge, huge, huge investment just to get in one thing. There are tons of different things you can get involved in, and just trial and error, right? See what works, see what doesn't work, see what's comfortable for you based on your strengths, your weaknesses, your interests, your values, all the things that we discussed. And once again, like I said, totally open invitation for anyone who would like to do a quick mentoring session in the future. I mentioned about how to get in touch with me. If you have any other doubts about that, you can contact the event organizers, and they can put you in touch with me via email, whatever you need. All right. That being said, I'm going to go outside and enjoy the sunshine here in Spain. My name is Bart. Wonderful being with all of you today, and have a great weekend. Take care.
That was a really astonishing session. I hope you liked it very much and you are super enthusiastic for our next session. Now, at last, we are going to see through the technologies like GCP, AWS, DevOps, and WebSockets. Get yourself ready for the session on learning out of box. We have Subhang Saxena sir to help you all to set up study-based for the IT world. Subhang Saxena sir is an LFX Mentee 21, JSOC 21, full stack at Habit, a research intern at IIT Delhi, an MLH fellow Fall 20, an ASI and ex-DSC lead, a SIH 19 winner, and a former research intern at IIIT Allahabad. So, you can begin now. The platform is all yours. So, you can begin now. The platform is all yours.
Let me just share my screen. Yeah. So hello and welcome everyone. My name is Shubhank. I am a fourth year engineering undergrad from Thapa University, Patiala. Soon to graduate by this month end, probably. So a brief about me and what are we, going to have in this session today is basically learning out of the box, the open source way. How do you learn and grasp the concepts that can be super helpful for you in the longer term and extract all of it from the open source way? So about me, I'm currently a Google Summer of Code contributor at GFOSS. I'm also currently a Linux Foundation mentee at Anukit. Soon going to end my research internship at IIT Delhi. Also, I'm a full stack engineer at Habit. I was also MLS fellow for the fall session 2020, and being a former research intern at IIIT Labad, and I've been actively participating in a lot of hackathons, winning somewhere around 6 national level of hacks. Yeah. So quickly going to the question, what is open source, right? So any projects or libraries that you use while you work on a project, right? So most of you must be using Python. Python is an open source language, right? You use NumPy and Pandas, many more libraries which probably you will be using in your day-to-day life can be attributed to open source. So projects or libraries that are in the open, I mean, the code base is open in the public and can be worked upon and contributed by anyone, can be counted as the open source part. So what is the speciality of open source? I mean, why do people want to get into open source? What makes open source such an amazing place to be? So let's say my friend creates a library to open Excel files using Python, right? And I realized that it does not work very well with some specific case for my Excel file. So I don't like that project particularly. But hey, since the project is open source, what I could do is I could change the code accordingly to make it work for me. And that is the power of open source. So since my friend has already done, let's say 70 to 80% of the work, all I have to do is build the 20% on top of it to suit my needs. And then I can use the library accordingly. So that's the power of open source. You can change the code. You could modify it according to your use cases, stuff like that. And what is open source, if you may ask? If you, let's say you create a project, right, and you make it public, that's open source too, right? So one of my very good friends, Harsh Mishra, his repository is Rotten Scripts. So basically this project is something which I really wanted to put in over here in the slides. It's because as far as he's told me, Rotten Scripts was some of the scripts that he had written to ease out some of the tasks and daily automation stuff. And he literally open sourced it. And if you check it out now, Rotten Scripts by Harsh Kasper, it is one of the most popular and sometimes, weekly trending projects in the category of the GitHub trending category. So that's the power of open source. You really don't have to, there is no specification as to which projects can be considered as open source. If you do a project and you make it public, that is what open source is. Right. So now the question begs, how do I start with open source? I being the person who's listening to this talk, right? So people always ask me that how to start with open source. And then the next question that they come up is, how do I start contributing in GSOC and programs like Outreachy? So the first thing that you got to clearly understand is that open source and open source standard programs, these are very two different things, right? So you really don't have to wait for any standard programs to start, and then you can contribute to open source, right? Again, taking an example of my friend's code, let's say my friend generates a PDF generator, right? And I feel like there is this small bug which probably he or she must have not observed correctly. So I know how this could be rectified, and I make some changes in the code. So that itself is an open source contribution, and yet I'm not a part of any standard programs like these, right? So this is something that I really wanted to highlight, is that when you want to start with open source programs, you really don't have to wait to be part of any standard programs. Just go out there, open up GitHub, take out any projects that you want to do. After this slide, I'll definitely try to show you guys a small demo of how exactly you can start contributing, right? So again, as I said, contribute or report any bug in the projects that you use. Sometimes, you may not be well versed with the code base of any particular project, but you still find a bug. Even if you report that bug on GitHub or any place the code is hosted, that itself is considered as an open source contribution, because hey, you are actually contributing towards, highlighting bugs can help the developers to rectify it. making their product great, and hence this was your contribution to the open source. Right. Third one is contribution to readmes and documentations. One of the most underrated forms of contribution, and yet the most important one. Because now I see that there is an entire program which Google has sponsored, which is known as Google Summer of Docs. That is actually branching out from the need and importance of contributing to readmes and documentation. For those of you who don't know, README is basically a starter code, a starter file in which you basically describe about the projects, and documentation is how you can replicate to the project, how you can contribute to the project. So these are very important. These are very important documents. And since I think everyone of us who's going to contribute is well versed with the technical terms, it's better you start contributing to READMEs and documentations. Right. Talk to people having small scale projects and take initiatives. Again, let's say your friend creates a project and he or she may be busy due to some of their personal reasons. And then you could definitely talk to them and, take an ownership. So you can be a co-contributor to them. I've seen a lot of small projects being converted to huge open source projects just because they were n number of people involved. Initially, which was started by one, is now basically maintained by a team of people. So that's how you can actually start. Basically take ownership of your known people's code bases and help them out. That is also part of open source contribution. I think even the last point that I've said is basically a recipe of how college-driven open source programs originated. So it's basically, let's say a college conducts their own open source programs, which I'll let you know after some slides. So even that idea originated from someone creating a project in that same college and probably open sourcing it, and then people can participate and contribute in that project. So that's how basically you can take ownership and be a part of open source journey, right? So how I started my open source, that is like one of the reasons why I think people have joined this session. So I founded Developer Student Club TIAT, one of the co-hosts of this entire program. And they started so I started an open source initiative in which we basically developed a lot of projects and we open sourced them. And taking the lead on those projects is what actually helped me to understand, the code from both the perspectives. One's a maintainer side and other a contributor side. So again, taking initiatives, taking ownership of the code, that has helped me in a very long term. Also, I was an active contributor to Mozilla's Tree Herder project in 2020. Since I was attempting to apply for Google Summer of Code in that year as well. So I contributed extensively over there. And of course, as my t-shirt clearly suggests, my first open source contribution was actually in Hacktoberfest. So at that point of time, I remember I actually forked up my senior's project and changed some sort of README. So that was a very starting point for me. And the last and most important point is that most of the learnings that I have done today can actually be attributed to the open source. So how do I know as a person that I'm ready for open source, right? So like open source is for everyone. You don't really need to have any special skill sets, to be part of any open source program, or any part of project as such. But the next question that begs up is that, are you ready for any sort of open source program? Well, that is, I don't want to discourage anyone, but well, technically you aren't. Till the time you work on your skill sets, you exactly aren't ready for any standard open source program. I'll get to the point. So understand the difference between the open source contributions and open source programs. So this is some place that I've heard a lot of people getting confused and a lot of people asking me. So what basically a lot of people have a misconception is that open source contributions, they only originate in the form of open source programs, right? But unfortunately, the open source programs, due to huge number of people's interest and limited amount of intake, can be sometimes competitive in nature. So again, not to discourage anyone, but if you basically possess some basic skill sets of open source contributions, then I think you are ready for open source programs. But that should definitely not stop you from actively participating in open source contributions. So that's one difference that I wanted to highlight, that each and every one of you who's here in this meeting, yes, you guys are ready for open source. You people are ready for open source. If you're ready for open source programs, that is something that you'll have to, evaluate on your own and work accordingly on your skill sets. So how do we get in the standard programs? That is something most of people would love to know. So research and participate only in the projects that suit your tech needs. You don't have to overdo anything to fit in the program. So this point, so yeah. So basically what I've seen so far in a lot of people is that in pursuit of, being part of open source programs, people tend to deviate from what they want to learn versus they learn the skill sets that actually helps them to get into program. Now, a small side defect to it or a downside to it is that you're not actually learning skills, for your own personal purpose. You're learning skill sets just to fit in at some place, which, in my personal opinion, is, a wrong thing to do. Because it should be, your learning should be a topmost priority, and then it should be the other way around, that once you have possessed a set amount of skill sets, only then you should contribute to open source programs, right? And the second part, and that I really wanted to highlight so far, is that a lot of people, because open source programs being a little prestigious in our country, people tend to follow a lot of YouTubers and blog writers, which basically show you how to crack GSOC, things like that, or pathway to GSOC, Outreachy, and open source programs. Now, in my personal opinion, this is not an ideal way to start your journey. And why I want to differentiate you guys from, why I want to prevent you all to follow this tip is because not everyone's journey is exactly the same way, right? So let's say something that worked for me would definitely can work for you, but that's not a guarantee. But for the people who claim to do that, 90% of the chances are that you will be misled by it, because things won't work out in your way, the way that these people suggested, and it may cause a lot of pain, agony, and disheartenness over the period of time. So how do I counter about it? A lot of people, they do watch these YouTubers and blog writers just to understand how GSOC works, and how can I be part of program. So instead of following a shortcut sort of thing, try to research on your own. And the reason why I emphasize self-research so much is getting into any standard program is an outcome of a mentality. Your hard work, your dedication, a lot of number of factors are being judged, and if you stand at par with those parameters, only then you are actually selected. Now let's say you follow someone, and you, let's say, take up shortcuts. So one of the parameters that you will definitely fail in is research and dedication, because you feel like blogs and YouTube channels like these, what they do is that they trap you in a false sense of hope, probably, and that diminishes your dedication towards the program. So one of the strong reasons that I believe a lot of people are not able to get into these programs is because people tend to find shortcuts, and I personally feel that is not the way to go about it, because I applied in GSOC 2020 and I was rejected, and then I applied again this year and I was selected. So you see, I almost worked around somewhere in the time scale of 1.5 years to be part of this program. So that shows that you can't have shortcuts, right? You got to follow a path. You got to dedicate your time, your efforts, your energy, and only then you can be part of standard programs. And why do I say so? Because these programs are slightly competitive in nature, unfortunately, due to the number of people applying to it versus the number of slots or people getting actually accepted in it. So again, how do I get into standard programs? The last part that I would like to highlight is that whenever you're contributing at a project, it's very important to maintain a constant contact with the mentors. I've seen a lot of people being exceptionally great programmers. They come onto a repository before onset of these programs. They contribute one hell of a thing out of everything. They merge all the patches and everything. But the only downside of this is that they usually don't communicate well with the mentors. So open source programs are not just testing your ability to how well of a programmer you are. It's an overall journey in which they test a lot of skill sets, like how well you are with your communication skill sets, how well you are good with your open source etiquettes, how well you entertain the newcomers in the community. So a lot of factors are involved, and one of the key factors that I believe so far that I've seen in a lot of GSockers and open source program, people have informed me about that communication is the key to everything. So how I did it, right? So in every slide that you see is a standard path and how I did it, right? So for me personally, the journey was that I participated in a lot of hackathons before I started the open source contribution. So doing so, it actually helped me to build a very strong base for a language and tool sets. So again, as I've told you, there is no requirement to contribute in open source. But when you want to get yourself into an open source program, things slightly turn a little bit towards the other way, because you got to show your skill sets to be part of this program. So I think for me, participating in a lot of hackathons, that actually helped me to build an understanding of various languages, tools, and how things work in general, right? Community driven projects. So again, as I told you, I founded DSC TIAT's open source initiative. So that actually also helped me to understand a lot of community driven things and open source etiquettes, like version control system, the art of communicating online in a remote fashion, contributing to projects of my friends, as well as contributing projects of large scale. So whenever you contribute to the projects of large scale, you basically understand how an entire organization works without actually being part of a company via placement sort of drive. So that also gives you a very good edge, because you tend to understand how remote work works, right? How people communicate asynchronously, synchronously, and try to achieve the same goal. And again, contributing to your projects of your friends is one of the best things that I've done so far. I've contributed to a lot of projects in that sense, and that is also very good practice, because you can make mistakes and there is no one to actually scold you for that, and all you have to do is just contribute and learn what are the mistakes that you have committed so far. And constant learning and improving my tech stack. So when I started with my GSOC 2020 journey, when I started to contribute with Mozilla, I only knew Django at that point of time. And the project that I was contributing to involved a lot of tech stack and technologies, like Django, React, Docker. And unfortunately, I wasn't versed in any of them except for Django, and that too at a very beginner level. So while I started to contribute towards it, it's basically that, so these contributions, they help me to equip new skill sets. Now that I see Docker being used in a project, at that point of time, I realized that Docker is also an important thing, to grasp your knowledge on. So constant learning through contribution is something that I would, encourage everyone to do. Again, whatever I did worked for me. Can't guarantee you all that this is a foolproof method of, getting into program or something like that. But I think I have tried to summarize it in a very generic way. And I hope that, it is helpful for each and every one of you. Also, since again, the last point, I always believe in learning as you go, right? Rather than learn and then proceeding. So I've heard a lot of people ask, a lot of people messaging me that, so what are the skill sets that you need to, what are the languages or tools that you need to learn in order to, be part of any standard program? That is an absurd question, right? How can you learn something and then go into open source contributions? Rather than it should be that you learn something, you are good at something, and and then you try to contribute over there. So again, and you again pick a lot of skill sets as you go. And the last part is that I learned to Google well. 99% of the problems that you will ever face in your entire journey can be found, programming journey can be easily found on Google. So that is one skill set that differentiates between a beginner and a good programmer. Just learn how to Google, right? So these are some of the open source programs that I wanted to highlight. And Girl Script Summer of Code being a very good program for beginners. I've seen a lot of GSOCers or outreachy contributors first being part of Girl Script Summer of Code and then coming to a scale of projects, programs like these. So I personally feel that it's a very good program for beginners. Google Summer of Code again is definitely you should apply, but only when you have a basic sense of open source contribution, right? You understand basic etiquettes, you understand version control system, you understand how remote communication works, and you are at least a little bit well versed with the stack of the project that you are going to use, right? Again, Linux LFX mentorship, Linux Foundation mentorship is also a very good program by Linux Foundation, similar on the guidelines of how GSOC works. And the last part being is that there are many colleges that have their own, open source programs and cohorts. So this is one repository that I would I would like to share with you all, the Dipanshu 1442 list of open source internship programs. This is one repository in which you can find a lot of interesting open source programs being listed down. Dipanshu is my college senior, so a plug about my senior over here, right? So apart from that, I just have a quick demo of how exactly you can be part of any open source program. In my case, I'll take GSOC and how you can start with your research and how exactly how to start basically the process of everything, right? So let's say the selections are there in March, right? And you start somewhere in early January. So the best thing that you should do is that you should open up Google Summer of Code website, right? And cool. So you open up all the organizations and you basically try to see the technological stack that is being used by each and every organization. And it's a good way because Google Summer of Code website also offers you previous year's organizations collection. So the best thing to start is open up the organizations and try to see all the technologies. Now let's say some of you are Python developers, right? So it would be better if you guys see, if you people start to look for the projects and organizations that straight away use Python code, right? Once you do that, you basically go into any of the projects. So in my case, I'll go to an open source project in which I was selected. Yeah, there it is. So you see, it uses Python, and since I'm a Python developer, this is what actually motivated me to contribute and apply my proposal towards this same project. So now the best thing that you could do is you simply click on the projects of the previous years, and you try to understand the code base, the links, and try to search them on GitHub and try to understand how they use. And most of the open source organizations, they have their own method of communication as well. So go there, introduce yourself, try to understand what exactly is the need of this year's open source programs cohort. So in my case, I basically am developing a Django based application, right? So this was listed over there when the idea list was presented over there in this form. So there were a lot of ideas that were listed, and I picked up my own to which basically and the project which suits my technical skill sets. And then I started contributing to it. I contacted my mentor a lot number of times. I basically had a proposal being drafted up in 15-20 days, and which basically suited the needs of my mentor. So that is a very generic way which I assume applies to a lot of open source programs. So I hope that was helpful for all of you. So that's it from my side. Thank you everyone of you who was present here, and you could actually connect with me on any of the following links. You can connect me on my website. That's shubhang.codes. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, again with the same name, Shubhang Saxena. GitHub, yeah, you can do that. Shubhang-Saxena is my username. Twitter, yeah, I actively use Twitter, so that would be a good place to connect with me. And if you're not comfortable with any of the public domains, you could directly mail me at saxena.shubhang.19@gmail.com. So that was it from my side. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us today. I hope that you all have learned a lot in this session, and we will be meeting soon again tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. So do join us. I'm Nikki Rani signing off for the day. Thank you.